Microphone.
We don't have to push a button anymore?
Not these, you don't.
I hereby call to order the 2023 meeting of the City of Prescott General Plan Committee. Board members present are, please say present when I call your name. James McCarver. Gary Warb.
Here. Present.
Deborah Thalassides had to go to the veterinary. She called me, so. Don Michaelman. Rob Moyer.
Here.
Jim Huffman.
Here.
Ralph Hess.
Present.
Mary Fredrickson.
Here.
Andre Carmen.
Here.
Terry Sapio.
Here.
And me, Ted Gambogi. This is an open meeting, public meeting, and is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, the public, local cable, and/or radio stations, and it may be rebroadcast. James is here. The number of board members present is 9, and it will require a vote of 5 for a majority. All parties wishing to be heard, including committee members, are required to state their name prior to speaking in order to ensure proper recordation. Members of the public are required to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. I think the first order of business is to approve the last meeting minutes.
Actually, we have open call to the public.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we have an open call to the public.
The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address the committee on matters not included on the agenda during the call to the public. Please complete a speaker card that are on the back table and submit it to me prior to the meeting being convened. Speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public is limited to 40 minutes in total. Citizens are limited to addressing the committee 4 times regarding the same topic. Please note, members of the committee may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda, and therefore, interaction will be limited to the following: responding to criticism, requests to staff to investigate and report on the matter, or requests the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. So first, we have J.D. Greenberg.
Good afternoon. This is probably not the last time that I will come before you to speak because, as many of you know, I have been very active for the last 20 years on open space and wildlife issues. And when I saw the caliber of the people who were appointed to be on this committee, I was really encouraged that we would be making some permanent changes for the betterment of open space and wildlife, as well as other pressing issues like water, the airport, and other things that I know you will identify in the general plan. I came here a little early today, and it was quite an education, and it really added to my frustration. I managed to pick up this form that was out on the front and learned all the things that the general plan is not. And basically, Tammy, who has been very helpful to me in other committees, explained to me that the general plan is just a guide, that it really has no teeth. And I don't think that the general public understands this, that you guys are going to be making recommendations, but under state law, it has no teeth to it. It cannot be enforced. It will just be adopted or not by the city council. And I really think that part of that is a shame because, like I said, I've known many of you for years, and you have contributed so much to this community. And to have you work for 3 years and not be able to have more impact on the direction that this community is going in is very disturbing. When I watched some of the meetings initially, I was very frustrated by the fact that you seem to be dealing more with minutia and with Apologies to the person who had you going through all of these different steps on how you make comments and this and that. It was like, no, don't waste your time and these important people's time with the process and all of this minutia. Just pull out the 2015 general plan, start going through it, make changes in areas, add on, and get down to it. I didn't realize that 2023 was going to be just the time that you're gathering information, that 2024 is going to be when you actually start writing it, and 2025 is when you start educating the public and have the vote. So today has been very educational for me. But what I had initially wanted and still would like to see done is to figure out a way that we can get some of the recommendations that are contained in the general plan actually into an amendment in the city charter, perhaps in the land development code, because again, I've gone to many planning and zoning meetings, and especially one where there was a PAD, and this person, because it was going to be low-income housing, which was started at $250,000, which in my boat was not low-income housing, they were getting allowances on setbacks and everything else. And what I've also seen is that the 25% for open space requirement has been just a sham in many cases. You know, they'll use the ends of cul-de-sacs, they'll use the islands in the streets and count all of that as open space, when in essence, it's not at all meaningful. So I would like to see some way that this group can figure out, with all of your expertise, some way that we can, either through the charter, through the building codes, or the land use code, figure out a way that we can make some of your recommendations that will be approved by the voters permanent and not just at the will of the current city council. So that's my spiel, and I hope you guys are able to accomplish it. Thank you.
JD, I'd like to make respond to a couple of things you said. We understand that your concerns, and we have the same concerns. There are members of the committee who have made an effort to make this part of the charter. The difficulty is, if it's in the charter, then we got to vote on it, and we have to wait 2 years. This was a law enacted by the state in 1998. We've had a number of general plans since. Some cities hire a consultant and check the box and turn it into the state, and they're happy. I think, credit to Prescott, we've got 11 really smart people, 10 if you exclude me, that have come together to put together a plan that represents the community. City staff, because I'm also vice chair of the Planning Commission, city staff, if there's a proposal that comes before us that has been addressed in a previous general plan, will bring that to our attention. Now, is it always adhered to? No, because it says in the law that this is not legally binding. So we here, I think I can speak for everyone, appreciate your concerns.
Thank you.
Ted?
Gary?
JD, I wanted to address what you appropriately brought up. I think it was perfect and good timing. One of our assignments for homework for this meeting was, what would we like to see incorporated in the general plan? One of my top 5 is legal. We're blessed to have 2 attorneys, 1 former judge here. I'm hoping that somehow or other, evolving from this, and this is my 2nd general plan, that we somehow go to Phoenix and say, we're not Phoenix, and we shouldn't be dictated by the rules in Phoenix. We should be dictated by what we really need to move forwards in this community. I know you've noticed it. This time around, I'm so pleased that we're working with a staff that's so wonderfully involved and evolves. It's a pleasure for me coming in here, having these great assignments, having to work with a great crew, and looking at moving forward. So I really appreciate what you said. I think it's really appropriate. I think a lot of people need to come up and say, I don't want to settle for this. I want more. And we need to say it, and it needs to be enacted on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Warren Tracy?
My name is Warren Tracy. I'm a 40-year-plus resident of Prescott, but I'm a neophyte and a newbie to this room. First time I've walked in here in my life. First of all, I want to start by saying...
Could you tell us your address, please?
Sure. It's 1126 Norris, as in Chuck Norris Road. I want to start by saying thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. When I say that, I genuinely appreciate it. It's valuable time, and I won't take much time. As my Cajun brother-in-law would say, I'm not bumping my gums for too long. I come here today as a representative of the Gail Gardner Ad Hoc Committee, and I learned just recently that based with discussions with you recently, that there was a 1997 general plan here that included neighborhood input. So I kind of come here today as representing the Gail Gardner folks, but also all the neighborhoods that were included in the 1997 plan. So I just wanted to make it a matter of record that these neighborhoods are included based upon the benchmarks that were set back in 97, that they would be included in the general plan that you're formulating today and going forward with. So that is my spiel for today, just to make it a matter of record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we have for today.
What's next on our agenda?
Approval of the May 31st, 2023 meeting minutes.
Does anyone have any comments? If not, we'll take a vote. All those in...
We approve the minutes.
Pardon?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is the discussion and presentation from the library.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Saft. I'm the director at the Prescott Public Library. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your time. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what we do at the library, some of the constraints that we have and will have in the future, and have you ask any questions that you may have. I don't have enough hands to juggle all these things, but I'll try. So the Prescott Public Library serves not only the city of Prescott, but all the surrounding areas. All the residents of Yavapai County can use Prescott Public Library as part of the agreement with the Yavapai Library Network. And the library is funded through a combination of the City of Prescott General Fund and a portion of the Yavapai County Free Library District's property tax. That is shared with the municipal libraries through a formula that was worked out a number of years ago. However, that portion has been reduced this year, expected to be reduced again in fiscal year 26. And that formula is one of the challenges that'll have to be addressed in the future to better utilize the taxes that paid by Prescott residents. Oops, where am I pointing this? Ah.
There we go. I'll do it for you so you have it for your
Okay, all right, thank you. So besides the traditional printed resources, we also at the library offer electronic resources, programming for all ages of the community, Library of Things, which is a new addition for us over the last few years, which includes a number of things like hiking kits, telescopes, ukuleles, so things that people might want to try out before they purchase. We also have services to homebound Prescott residents. Those of our community who can't get to the library can still receive library services. Among the other things that we offer are wireless access, downloadable books and audiobooks. We offer streamable videos and off-site return. So we have a number of drop boxes around the city that you can return items without having to come downtown. We're a busy library. We serve over 1,000 persons a day that come to the downtown Prescott area. We're open 7 days a week and 61 hours a week. So because we're open every day of the week and 61 hours during the week, staffing for us is an issue. We're minimally staffed, and when we have sickness or leaves, that means that we're not able to fully staff current service areas. I'll lay these down here. And as the population increases with planned developments in the city, this is going to become more noticeable. That's right. So as part of the post-pandemic planning, the library recently internally completed a 3-year action plan. Go there. And among the actions that we want to take is to bring additional programs to the library for our Prescott residents. We do an annual survey of library patrons, and they suggest that although we offer many programs, there are some areas that we could better cover. Obviously, in order to provide additional programming, staff needs time to prepare and present those programmings. Again, pointing towards the need of increased staffing to provide increased services. We try to leverage partnerships with other organizations in the city to provide programming whenever we can. So we partner with a number of groups, GEM, we partner with the Astronomy Club, we partner with the old Geology Society. There's a number of groups that we partner with to present programming. Another thing that we want to do is to reach out to the community where that community is. So our demographics in Prescott mean that many of the residents may not be able to physically come to the library. So being able to meet them in other spaces may be the best way to share the library resources and services. Libraries are not a static organization. Things are constantly changing. Collections are constantly changing. Our library space for printed materials is currently full, so we add about 1,000 items a month to our collection. So obviously, if we add 1,000 items, we have to take out 1,000 items. So most of the items that you see on the library shelves are current, but constantly changing. Also, you all know that digital library services continue to increase. Those digital services cost much more than the traditional print services. So that is another pressure on our materials budget. I mentioned earlier Library of Things, and that's a popular segment of our library. But Library of Things requires storage. And our space at the current library is pretty maxed out. We have very little space to store items, so a number of staff have these items stored in their offices and around their desks. And another piece that we are currently missing is keeping current with Spanish language collection. We originally did a good job with that, but we haven't had the staff who's cognizant with that collection in order to do that. So we're hoping to get back to that again. So one of the things that we are looking at is working with the Friends of the Library, who recently received a $5 million bequest for building a branch library or renovating the downtown library. Renovating the downtown library is sort of problematic in that the current footprint is pretty maxed out. So expanding anywhere there isn't going to be possible. You could do some manipulation of internal pieces of the library in order to make it flow easier, but it doesn't add any actual usable space to the library. A new branch library would hopefully meet the needs of those areas in town that are growing and are planned to be developed. Having a branch library in some of these areas would have the advantage of reducing travel and traffic to the downtown area. We also have a lack of parking at the branch library. We have less than 50 spaces of parking at the branch library. Or not the branch library, the main library, I'm sorry. Also, a thing that is in great demand is our meeting rooms. So we currently have a number of meeting rooms that range from 110 is our largest meeting room down to 8 is our smallest meeting room. And we have 3 two-person study rooms. Those are constantly in demand. It's hard to find a space where you can actually have a meeting. So one of the things that we want to do with the first segment of the proposed branch library is to provide additional meeting rooms for the public. And there are other pieces of the library that we are working with the Friends of the Library to help renovate. For example, the Teen Zone is a special area in the library for those in-between ages of kids who are too old to be in the children's area but not really feel comfortable enough to be hanging out with the adults. And that is heavily used, especially during school times. And we like to say it is lovingly worn. So we're trying to do what we can to upgrade and modernize it. Let's see, I think you need to go one more here. No, I think, can we step back one? There you go. If I only had 3 hands. Another thing we want to do is to look ahead and design areas that are useful. One of the things that we've talked about for a number of years is utilizing the lawn area on the east side of the library. We don't really have any outdoors programming area. We have looked at creating an amphitheater space there that would be able to be utilized by the community and the public and present library programs. And again, the Friends of the Library are stepping up to help us look at that. Another piece of our plan is to reach out to promote programs and services of the library. Obviously, when we increase programs and services, we still have to man those desks every day, 61 hours a week. You can tell I have a ongoing problem. Also, we want to better utilize electronic and print resources to meet specific population needs in our community. As I said earlier, there are a number of people who aren't able to get to the library, so having a lot of material electronically available makes it available for those who can't physically come into the library. I think one thing that people sometimes don't think about in planning is the need for staff to keep up to date on new ideas and technological offerings. Our staff obviously needs to keep on this in order to provide services that is requested and desired by the community. It's often hard for them to break away from the desk in order to do that, just because, as I've said before, we're minimally staffed. And another piece of our staffing is custodial. I know that's not it's not something that people often think about, but when you have 1,000 people a day through the library, there is a need for that, especially when we're limited with funds. We don't have anyone there on the weekends. So by the time Monday morning comes, it's looking used. One of the things that we did in the past year was to add a community services librarian to our staff. She is currently operating under a grant from the Librarian Services and Technology Act through the Arizona State Library. And she does a lot for our library. She assists people in various states of transition. So she helps people fill out job applications. I'm sure you're all aware that a lot of job applications can only be filled out electronically now. She helps people with Medicare applications, insurance applications. She helps people find the best places to get information. And as I said, she mainly concentrates on those people in transition. One of the things that we find is that because there's a real lack of day shelter for unsheltered, unhoused people in Prescott, that we're sort of the go-to place to get in out of the freezing cold or get in out of the snow. This isn't really a problem for us. We are open to everybody in the community, but these people have needs that she can help with. So she's really made a difference in our in the people that come through the library. And we hope at one point to have her full time because the need is there. That's all right. So just sort of to recap, I think we have a number of opportunities ahead of us. The main one being working with the Friends of the Library to bring that additional branch library to completion. That's going to require a couple of things. One is to work in coordination with the city to acquire land that works for people's access to the library as well as works for the city. Also, if you have an additional branch library, there are additional staffing costs associated with that. We also want to continue to provide library services to our community, and those library services are continually changing. As you know, the library today isn't what you grew up with. It isn't even what it was 10 years ago. So our staff needs to keep up on those changes and how to provide that service to the community. A growing piece is the Library of Things. We have constant suggestions about items that we could add to the Library of Things that would make items available to the entire community. So an individual person might not have to buy them, or they could try them out before they buy them. Another piece is the growing use of electronic resources for the library. As I stated before, electronic resources are more expensive than print resources, so that's another strain on our budget. I think the library, well, obviously I think the library is a great deal for the community. We get anecdotal reports constantly about how important the library is to somebody's decision to relocate to Prescott. So we're proud of the service that we give, and we hope that the residents see that as well. Like I said, our use continues to increase, and additional development, housing, population means that we'll only see that continue to increase. And in order to meet that demand, it's almost imperative that we either have new space and additional staff, preferably both. That is all I have to present. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, Jim?
Which Jim? I have one too, but you go first. No, my question is potential locations for the branch. Did you mention that, or?
We've looked at a number of locations with the Friends, but there's not been anything that's been decided upon. The Friends need to work with city, community development, planning, legal department of the city in order to figure out how to do that. They have the money to build a branch, but not to operate a branch. And, that's sort of the city's responsibility to operate the branch. So how to turn that over and how that all works still needs to be worked out.
One potential I would think would be Warren.
That's where we've been looking, a number of places there. I think it's that way, isn't it? Around, we've looked at spaces around Willow Lake. We've looked at spaces out near Granite Dells, where the new Granite Dells Park would be. It's just a matter of figuring that out amongst the different parties.
James, did you have a question?
Just a couple. You mentioned that your funding sources have been decreased for this year and next year. Why was that? What caused that?
So what I was referring to there was the money that's shared by the Yavapai County Free Library District. I think they're experiencing growth in the county as well, so they have a demand on their resources. I don't see that getting any better until the library tax is increased in the county, so there'll be more money to go around. My fear is that the money that's currently shared with the public libraries in the county, or the municipal libraries in the county, will continue to decrease, which obviously puts an added burden on the general fund of the city.
So you mentioned two sources. What was the other one? The city and
The general fund of the city and the Yavapai County Free Library District property tax.
and so both of those resources have been decreased.
The county library tax share that we get, that the Prescott Public Library gets, has been decreasing. This year, we managed to keep the budget that we had proposed. So what was decreased from the county was picked up by the general fund of the city.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Rod Moyer, can you tell us in general terms how the cost of the digital part of your services is so high? Is it subscriptions to information? Is it equipment maintenance and upgrades, or what?
Yes. It basically has to do with the publishing companies.
Yeah.
The publishing companies charge a tremendous amount more for library use of electronic materials. Their fear is that we won't buy as many printed items if we have electronic items. I don't think that's true, but where you can go online and buy an electronic book for $15, we may have to pay $85 for that same item. And not only that, there's a limited number of uses that it can have. So after different publishers have different uses, but after a certain number of uses, you have to buy that item again. It's obviously not worn out, but you have to buy it again.
Thank you.
Mary?
Mary Frederickson. And again, thank you. On funding, you mentioned both the county property tax and the city's general fund. Between those two, do you depend on, do you get more from one than the other?
In past years, it's been about 20 to 25% of our funding come from the property tax share, and the rest came from the general fund. I think this year the proportion is like about 17% comes from the shared property tax, and the rest comes from the general fund.
So the great majority, anyway, comes from the city general fund?
Yes.
And also, you mentioned the Friends of the Library have closer? Thank you. The Friends of the Library have funds available for the branch?
They were given about $5 million from a longtime donor when she passed, which was don't know the legal term. It is required of them that they spend that money either on a library branch or a renovation of the current library.
Wow, that's great. Do you think, just in general, obviously there are no plans, so you may not know this, but would that cover both purchasing the land and building?
No.
Just the building?
We did have, the Friends paid for an architectural firm who mainly build libraries to come and meet with the public and try to determine what use we would need and what that cost would be. So the total cost of a building, which would probably meet our needs for the next few years, is about $12 million. So there would still be a gap. The Friends could currently fund the first half of that, which what I was talking about earlier would give us more meeting room spaces, more programming spaces, a small area for collections. Then there would have to be additional funds raised to expand that to the size that the advisory group suggested.
So you would be looking to that city-county split of funds to?
Yeah, I don't know where that all would come from. I think the Friends in the past have been, when we built the current library, the Friends raised a few $1 million then. So I think it'd be a combination of fundraising and city funds.
Other means.
But there's always pressure on all the funds in the city. So.
And the last question that I have, do you have some best wish location in your head that you might want to see come to be for a branch library?
I would like to see out on the northern portion of the city, somewhere between Heritage Park Zoo and the upcoming Granite Dells Park. I think there's going to be a lot of population growth there. If you place it in the right spot, you could also take advantage of outdoor education and kind of fold that into the library's mission.
Thank you.
Ralph.
Hello, Ralph Hess. I'm a bit familiar with using the Yavapai Library Network, and I'm interested in how those facilities would meet some of the needs that you've been describing. For instance, I know I can use my Prescott Public Library card and go over to Yavapai College and get a book, take something out of that library. I can go to Prescott College, take something out of that library. I can get books sent from the Verde Valley libraries over to Prescott Library to pick it up. I don't know about Embry-Riddle, but if Embry-Riddle's in part of that program, you've got that library up north. How does that network fulfill some of your subject matter diversity needs and the needs to have branches in these various parts of the city?
Yeah, we've shared materials across the county for a number of years now, more than 20 years. So that's not something new for us. Obviously, we don't have to acquire more technical things if they're available at Embry-Riddle, Yavapai College. Yavapai College in the Verde campus is pretty much doing away with their print collection. I don't know if the Yavapai College in Prescott will be following that, but that will be a reduction of print materials that are available. As a Yavapai Library Network member, you're able to use your card anywhere in the county. Obviously, when you borrow things, they still come to our library. We still have to be there for you to come to pick them up. So it's still providing service out of our library. I don't know that there'd be a reduction of need for those other library functions that I talked about, community meeting spaces, programming areas, that type of thing.
Anyone else? Eric Moore has a question. Councilman Eric Moore.
Thank you. If you were to build a branch, would your share of the funds distributed by the county increase? If you had a second location.
That is probably a political question that I'm not able to answer. No, I think that is one of the things that we'll have to look at in the future is looking again at the way that the formula says that money is distributed and determine a better process. Yeah, I don't know that it would increase.
So that's really a Board of Supervisors issue at the county level.
Yes, the Board of Supervisors operates as the county library.
The second question I have regards all the volunteers that you use. What percentage of hours would you say are currently being used by volunteers versus staff in the library, and could you use more volunteers?
We have 117 volunteers currently, and I think they make up about the equivalent of 5 FTE. We utilize volunteers in all of the behind-the-scenes functions, so we do not use volunteers in service desks that require a deeper understanding and knowledge in order to answer questions or to provide that service. So we use volunteers just about everywhere we can. Yeah.
Ralph Hess has another question.
Yeah, Ralph Hess again. On the, this wouldn't satisfy your need for a new branch, but you commented about limited space at the current location. Has there been any discussion about the expanding the library into those city buildings that are on the west side of Marina, right across from the parking lot that are now housing, I think, finance and budget? I don't know who else over there right now anymore, but if they relocate out of that space over to here, and I don't know what the overall city plan is for how many departments are going to be coming over here. Has there been any discussion about library possibly expanding into that space?
I'm not aware of any discussion about that. Again, if you're talking about a physical area removed from the current library, you're talking about additional staff. And so that's always the big thing that is a block in a lot of things, is just the cost of additional staff. I think the square footage might be there to do some additional things, but you'd have to have it staffed all the time.
Any other questions? I have a couple.
Sure.
I've lived in a lot of places, but I've never used a library as much as I use Prescott Library, and I find it welcoming, friendly, and your ability to network with other libraries provides us with a lot of books. You said you have 117 volunteers?
Yes.
And how many FTEs?
That's about 5. The volunteers? Yeah, that's about 5.
5 FTEs and 117 volunteers?
Oh, FTEs. No, we have, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you're asking me. We have 22.5 FTE and 117 volunteer. Is that what you're asking? How many staff we have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paid staff, 22?
I think it's 22.5.
How do you have a half person?
Yeah, we only have a half person. We have a half-time person.
What percent of your meeting rooms in the current library are used?
What percentage are used?
Yeah.
I don't have that number. I'm sorry. But if you look online on our calendar, you'll see how many groups meet there on a daily basis.
Okay. In the second library, how do they handle inventory duplication?
Sorry, say that again?
If you have a second library, how do you handle inventory duplication?
Meaning?
Like, would you take the DVDs out of the current library and move them to the new location, or would you buy new DVDs?
I think there's a number of ways you can do that. You can spread the collection out. I think you have to start with some some minimal collection in a new library. I've seen places where they call it a floating collection, so depending on where it's returned, it lives there. We do have a person that picks up our book drops and goes to the central sorting location and collects items that are coming from other libraries, as Mr. Hess mentioned, or going back to other libraries. So we could easily transport things back and forth. We wouldn't have to have a complete duplication of materials.
Now, with 1,000 people a day, we don't know where they come from, but that might alleviate some traffic coming up and down Willow Creek.
Perhaps.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the discussion and presentation from the airport director. Robert?
Thank you. Oh,
Okay.
let's have a chat, shall we? So I'm Robin Sabat. I'm the airport director. I've been out there for about 5.5 years. This is my 6th airport, and it's a blend of general aviation and commercial service experience, including Phoenix Sky Harbor, San Luis Obispo, Oceano County in California, Muskegon, and Deer Valley Airport. So seen a few different airports, and you'll see that through the presentation, some history from those facilities as well. So this airport's been around almost 100 years. Granville Dan Fain donated the property to the city of Prescott back in 2028. So we're going to have that 100-year anniversary coming up. And this is an asset that I think has been real important, perhaps underutilized in way past years, and it's really coming into its own more recently. So I pushed it. Is there a trick?
The other button.
This button?
Yeah.
Okay. Some other historic items. In 1947, first airline flight, TWA flew in a DC-3. In 1978, Embry-Riddle broke ground, and that's the air traffic control tower in the background that was built immediately prior to Riddle beginning flight training operations out of Prescott Regional Airport. In 2018, we got our inaugural jet service, and that is a CRJ 200 that's sitting on the ramp. Prior to that point, we had had some larger aircraft, but no jet service. And then in 2021, we got our new passenger terminal. Have any of you seen our old terminal? Have you been there? It's a real favorite, right? A lot of people like it out there. They didn't want to have us move to a new terminal because there was a lot of affection for that old terminal, but when you flush the toilet on the men's side and it comes out on the women's side, you go, yeah, maybe we need a new terminal. Yeah. We actually needed more TSA equipment, but it was so heavy that if we would have installed the equipment they offered us, it would have fallen through the floor. So we had to move to the new location. The size of that terminal is 18,600 square feet, but because of the way it was designed, we call it the big roof concept. The FAA supported us for a 23,000 square foot footprint. So using storefront, we can actually expand that terminal a pretty low cost to be able to accommodate it from its current 2 gates to go to 4 gates. So over the past 5 years, 2017 to 2022, we did serve more than 200,000 total passengers. To give you an idea, if you look at the chart across the bottom, the red years are before I arrived, and we had hit about 6,900 total passengers in 2016. The blue bars that you see are the jet service impact. Does everybody see those at the bottom? And that's where we finished off in 2022, having served 48,600 total passengers. We're continuing to increase. As you can see by the bar chart across the bottom, we did have a drop during COVID years, and we're recovering nicely from that. So on the top is our current aircraft. It's a CRJ 200 regional jet. I'll refer to them as RJs through the presentation. That's what's currently serving Prescott. Down below is the future aircraft. This is a critical aircraft that's determined by the FAA. Excuse me, it's a Embraer 175, and depending on the seating configuration, if it's dual class or single class, it's somewhere 70 to 80 seats, okay? And that, few people look at it and they say, gee, it looks a lot like a 737. Do you see that kind of people? Well, that's not what it is. So don't worry. 37s are actually operating out there, but they're not operating commercial service. The U.S. Forest Service is using 737s. They recently had a mishap and one of theirs crashed. They're looking at bringing in the possibility of a 737 7 or 800 series to be used for forestry operations. We can do that in a limited nature, but our runway strength is only 100,000 pounds maximum gross takeoff weight. So if you were to use it extensively for aircraft above that weight, say like the 37s are 160 to 180,000 pounds maximum gross takeoff weight, it would begin to deteriorate the runway pretty quickly. So we save those exceptions for the U.S. Forest Service and for the occasional presidential arrival. Other things. Okay. Some people think, are we ever going to be going toward Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport? When I started at Phoenix, there was 8 million total passengers, and when I left, it was around 40 million total passengers. Wow. No, we will not be Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. Even if we extend the runway, which I'll be discussing, I'll explain why, it doesn't have the strength to be able to accommodate large aircraft with any level of frequency. So right now, we just finished a marketing study. It's called a leakage study. What that means is passengers can leak or go somewhere else to fly. Anybody here have an idea of where they leak to? If they don't fly out of Prescott, where are you going to fly out of? Sky Harbor, number one. Yeah, Flagstaff. Phoenix Mesa Gateway, and one more.
I know people who drive all the way to Las Vegas.
There you go. That's the fourth one. You guys are pretty sharp. So the Las Vegas folks.
Gary had a moment of brilliance, but we missed it because we couldn't hear it.
I'm sorry if you can't hear me, I can't repeat myself. But it was Las Vegas.
Vegas.
Which actually, it's a very popular, people call all the time and say, are you going to Vegas, right? They want to go to Vegas. It is cheaper for a lot of international flights. So what we find is more on average go there for an international, to catch an international flight. So you can see that our goal is to meet the needs of our community. The top destinations are on your right. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Denver are in the top 4. Right now we have daily nonstop service to Los Angeles and Denver. Now, our Essential Air Service bid is underway right now. We actually received subsidy by the federal government under a program called Essential Air Service, which was established back in 1978. It's in part subsidized by transit flights crossing the United States but not landing, and that money is used to help subsidize flights into small communities. There's more than 100 Essential Air Service communities in the United States. There's only 3 in the state of Arizona. Show Low, Page, and Prescott received those subsidies. So every 2 to 3 years, you go out for a bid. Our bid is due to come in on Thursday night at 11:59 p.m. It goes to the U.S. Department of Transportation, and any airline that wishes to serve Prescott can offer, a bid to serve. I should know those bids by Friday, so we'll see what's coming in. It might be interesting. So the locations on the right would be the places where people most likely want to go based on the leakage study. And our goal is to eventually get to about 6 to 8 departures a day. That's also 6 to 8 arrivals. So that would be a nice, comfortable amount that would be able to use our existing gate hold rooms up to the configuration of 4 that we could have. Oh, on the left-hand side of the screens are all the cities that you can get to within one stop of Prescott. So going through Denver, there's roughly 140 to 150 cities that you can get to with one stop in Denver. Down below, it's about 100 that you can get to through Los Angeles, just under 100. So through those locations, there's a lot of one-stop service that we can take advantage of. The current carrier is SkyWest Airlines. It's operated by them, but they do have a code share with United Airlines.
What are the lines that going off the side?
Yeah, there's some good ones going off the side. Well, some of them are going to Alaska and Hawaii. Some are going to South America. And there are some European flights that fly directly from Denver. For example, I am going to London in August, and I found that it was actually cheaper to fly out of Prescott than it is out of Phoenix. So there is some opportunity if you look around for some fares and do it in advance. Yeah. It's almost $200 more for me to fly out of Phoenix than it would be to fly through Denver and then nonstop from Denver to London.
So I have a question then.
Sure.
So Gary Warp, why is it more expensive to fly, if I was going to Atlanta, well, actually to Denver, why is it more expensive from Prescott than from Phoenix?
You know, it really varies. It depends on how far out you bought the ticket. If you did pre-planning, obviously, if it's last minute, it costs you more money last minute. But there's some other things you should know about, and I'm going to be getting to those. You can see that do affect pricing.
Robin?
Yes.
Terry Sapio. Your calculation for a couple $100 less expensive out of Prescott, that include the savings on parking?
No, it didn't. That's an extra
so you
goodie.
save even more.
Yeah, so I don't have to take a shuttle. I don't have to do parking. So
That's
that is
great.
quite nice.
Yeah.
And people really love the free parking at Prescott. Does anybody want us to change that?
No.
No. Let's put that in the general plan, right?
Right.
Revenue generation.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the airline industry because it's going through a big evolution right now, and it is actually impacting Prescott in more ways than maybe we anticipated. So right now, you can see that there is a Boeing current market outlook, CMO. It's done every year. I checked the latest before I came into this meeting. That's the pilot and technician outlook. And what they do is they're the most reputable source in the world on what our future looks like in terms of potential shortages of personnel. We have projected shortages worldwide of more than 600,000 pilots over the next 20 years. That is going to affect your ability to get a flight because the airlines are having to make tough decisions on where they can put the limited pilots that they do have. The other thing is there's also shortages in maintenance technicians, and there's shortages in the cabin crew. So those all need to be anticipated. But we have a little secret weapon here, don't we, in this area? And that's Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University is feeding into that system, as well respected as a partner. And in fact, they are in part why we originally got jet service, is Embry-Riddle came along with us to our visit to St. George, Utah, back in 2018 when we were asking for jet service. And at that time, the airlines were already worried about the pending pilot crisis and the pilot shortage. So making a relationship, trying out Prescott, we had a real bad history. You saw that bar chart I showed you of not a lot of passengers. They thought that meant that there wasn't a lot of demand. What they found out is it was just a crummy carrier, and we needed a good carrier, and the demand shot up. And actually, out of 111 essential air service cities, we actually had the 6th highest number of passengers being served out of all those 111 cities. We're one of the few airports in the nation that I do believe can evolve off of essential air service because the market is here for us to stand on our own 2 feet. So because of the pilot shortage, some things have been happening. One thing is that pilot salaries are soaring. Some of the students that are leaving these pilot training programs and going into the airlines are getting 6-figure signing bonuses. Next, the network carriers like United, Delta, and American are accelerating the retirement of their 50-seat aircraft. Why? Because if you only have a few pilots or you do have a shortage, you get rid of the smaller aircraft and you have them fly larger aircraft with more passengers. The next thing that's happening is they've decided to completely stop service at 74 cities since 2020. In fact, last year I received a call in the middle of the night that says tomorrow morning we're going to announce that we're going to be pulling service on 30 cities. But we wanted to let Prescott know you're one of 3 we're going to keep. Want to talk about a wake up in the middle of the night call? Okay. So I was happy to get that call and happy that this market is considered a good market for them to stay in, but we want to keep that position. Next, the regional carriers, and SkyWest Airlines is the largest regional carrier in the United States. They're also retrofitting their 50-seat aircraft down to 30 seats, and they're creating a new entity called SkyWest Charters. What that's doing is basically taking them down to a level that doesn't require the pilot qualifications of the higher level 50-seat planes. They're doing that, again, because of the lack of availability of the more seasoned pilots. So this is an opportunity for them to be able to continue serving small communities. But if they were to bid that, that would result in a 29,000 seat per year drop into our market. So we have been in significant discussions with them to make sure that they are going to continue to well receive and respect Prescott in the market that we provide. So this is a very important time. There are also legislative measures underway right now. The FAA Reauthorization Act is actually being considered. We were working with both Senator Sinema and with Senator Kelly on some of the language that's going to be in the FAA Reauthorization Act. That was last week. They're looking at increasing the pilot retirement age, and also they're looking at some adjustments in pilot training. There is significant opposition by the Airline Pilots Association relating to reducing the amount of training because of safety. If you've heard about the Colgan Air crash and the original reason why safety measures were put in place, that's something that is actively discussed right now in Congress. So these are all items that are coming into play in the airline industry that do affect the ability of people to have service locally. What's going to happen is, because there is no market for the 30 to 50 seat aircraft that's increasing right now, and because of the difficulty in finding pilots, the aircraft manufacturers are not wanting to build any more 30 or 60, 50 seat airplanes. They want to go up to at least the 74 seat plane that I showed you earlier. And if you don't do that, and if you're a community that's not ready to do that, the only option is for you to go down. And who in this room wants to go down to 9-seat airplanes? Right now, the aircraft that are the 30 to 50 seat aircraft are going to time out, age out, mechanical out in about 6 to 8 years. Prescott is one of the few airports that's going to be able to push up, hopefully, to the next level and be able to accommodate the 74 seat aircraft. But if we don't, we will be looking at 9-seat airplanes, where, by the way, the 9th seat is often a toilet that's covered up with a seat. I mean, this is not what we need to do as a growing community that needs the vitality and support of a good carrier service. So when we look at what's happening, we just looked at passengers. Now we're going to look at aircraft operations.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
The runway is currently set up for 75-seat aircraft. Is that true?
It depends on the time of year. We'll talk about that, because it has to do with the fact that we're a hot and high airport. And there are times that an aircraft will have to operate with limitations. Let's discuss that, because that's a good question, Andre. So the total number of aircraft operations that we achieved in 2022 was 307,389. An aircraft operation is a takeoff or a landing. You add all those together over a year, and that's the number you get. That number is a tower count. It does not count aircraft operations that happen after the tower is closed. We're a 24-hour airport, so at 10 o'clock at night, the tower closes, but aircraft operations still continue until 6 a.m. in the morning when the tower opens again. So this 307,000 does not include roughly another 5 to 10,000 that probably occur over the year after those hours, particularly some instrument flight training that's done by the training institutions. That number ranked us as the 24th busiest airport in the country. That puts us at about the level of Oakland, San Francisco, Boston, and many other airports in the country. We're actually busier than JFK and LaGuardia in terms of total number of operations. We are the 3rd busiest airport in the state of Arizona. So a lot of people don't realize we are right now the busiest collegiate training base in the country, busier than even the main campus at Embry-Riddle or University of North Dakota that both do active training. Even though we made 307,000 operations, and that's pretty impressive, that's not our all-time high. Back in 1997, we reached 353,000 operations. And in fact, there were 10 consecutive years from 1995 until about 2000, like 1994 to 2004, in which we exceeded 320,000 operations each year. So what we hit just last year, as impressive as it was, is still less than we hit for 10 consecutive years over the 90s and 2000s. Now, you'll notice that there was a downturn in operations. Does everybody see where it started to turn down in about 2004, 2005? At that time, there were actually too many pilots, so there was a downturn. There was sort of a glut at that time. And so as that downturned, and you get down to 2006, 2007, when you were down in the 200,000s, This is also coincidentally when a lot of the home development and building was underway. Do you see that as you go across the bottom? So when you have somebody who moved in, say even in 2019, and they say, I've never seen so many operations at the airport as I've seen in the last 24 months or 12 months, it's because they weren't here in the 1990s and early 2000s when we experienced even more operations than we are today. To give you an idea, during that time period in the 90s and 2000s, there were days in which we exceeded 2,000 operations in a day. Right now, our average is 880 operations per day. So when somebody moves in next to the airport and says, I didn't expect it would be this busy, that's our average right now. It's going to go up. We've got record numbers in our flight training institutions. So here is our FAA-approved future forecast for 2021 and the 20 years beyond. I've narrowed it down just to enplanements, which is people getting on board plane. You double that for total passengers. You can see that we went from base year in 2021 of approximately 23,000, which is about 46,000 total passengers, to 2041, when we expect to hit roughly 152,000 people getting on board planes or enplanements, double that to 300,000 total passengers. That's what we expect to see going through our terminal. In terms of total aircraft operations, you can see the 311 was the 2021 amount. And by the time we get to 2041, unconstrained, 20 years from now, that could be around 487,000 operations. Anything over 405,000 operations puts us in the top 5 busiest airports in the country. We're talking about Denver, Chicago O'Hare, Atlanta, that level. It's not the size of the aircraft, it's the number of flights going in and out. So you have an idea, okay? Now, by unconstrained, what that means is if you can accommodate every aircraft that wants to come in, that's what unconstrained means. Obviously, with our runway configuration right now, we probably could not accommodate that many aircraft, or if we did, it would be with significant delay. So we have to talk about strategies as we move forward. This is the current geometry of the airport it's laid out. In the red, you will see 3 runways. We have what are referred to as staggered parallel runways. With the bottom of the 2 runways, see how it says CS? That's your commercial service runway. That's 7,600 and change feet long currently. We have a parallel runway, general aviation runway, used for smaller aircraft. And then we have one we refer to as the crosswind runway. I've also put on there all of the training institutions that are currently operating out of Prescott. There are actually 7 of them listed up there. Embry-Riddle is on both sides of the airfield, North Air, Yavapai College, the Helicopter Institute, Guidance, Lenore, and Alpha Air. We are actually in discussions right now. A major airline is interested in even bringing more flight training here. I cannot discuss who that entity is. That could continue to increase aircraft operations at Prescott if an 8th training entity wished to come in. You'll also see on there in yellow, off to the end of the 2 staggered parallel runways, are the proposed extensions for those runways that have been on the airport layout plan, which is our approved planning document with the FAA, for over 10, almost 20 years. And you can see that the goal is to extend the commercial service runway to approximately 10,000 feet and the general aviation parallel to over 6,000 feet.
Robin?
Yes, sir?
Is there room? Okay. Terry Sapio, is there room on the crosswind runway for an extension?
It's not currently planned for an extension, and in fact, there is some community pressure to close down that runway from both directions for housing needs.
Can commercial service take off on the cross runway?
It really depends on the size aircraft. When Boutique was operating for a while, along with SkyWest Airlines, and they were operating 9-seat aircraft, yes, they could actually technically take off on the crosswind runway. And the smaller the aircraft is, the more sensitive it is to crosswind. Because remember, an aircraft can't just take off any direction it wants to. It needs to take off into the wind. So when we receive a community concern about why don't you just have them go the other direction, it's not like it's an option for the aircraft to be able to just do that if there is a level of wind that prevents that.
In your earlier slide, you talked about projections.
Yes.
In 2026, that assumes how many commercial flights a day?
Depending on the size of the aircraft. I could get that for you. Let me get you. I actually have a more detailed analysis that actually breaks it down by that if you would like me to get that for you. And then it also tells you the mix of aircraft that would be operating at that time.
One more question. You mentioned that there's some community desire to see the crosswind runway go away. Doesn't that crosswind runway, especially if there was an opportunity to extend it, give the airport more versatility and also a backup in case there was a mishap on your main runway and you could continue operations on the crosswind runway?
I think the crosswind runway is extremely important for the smaller training aircraft. As you get larger, less sensitivity of wind occurs. I think because the predominant wind is to the southwest, the aircraft taking off to the southwest. So what we need to do 80% of the time, that's the direction they need to take off. So if you're going to do more, it would be more valuable to extend the two parallels because only about 18% of the traffic uses the crosswind runway right now.
Okay.
While it would be helpful for smaller aircraft, it isn't as necessary for the larger commercial service.
Okay.
But it was a good question. Thank you. Okay. So we've got a lot going on. Since I arrived in 2018, we've done tens of millions of dollars in projects. We've received more than $52 million in state and federal funding in support of this airport. That's probably more than the combined total of what this airport received in the previous 20 or 30 years. We've had a lot of support from our federal and our state partners. Over the next 6 years, we're looking at $116 million in potential investment into the airport. When those funds come in from the Federal Aviation Administration under the Airport Improvement Program, the share for the federal government is 95%. For the state is 2.5%, and our share is 2.5%. So it's a pretty darn good deal.
That's the deal.
Arizona Department of Transportation, when they fund a grant, are generally a 90-10, so 90% funded by the state, 10% by the local government. We are actually in a category called economically disadvantaged right now. It's a congressional designation. That's what gets us the 2.5% match. If we ever lose that designation, our match goes to 5%. So right now we've had that designation for a couple of decades, so we hope that continues. It's based on the entire county because our service is for the entire region. So you can see I've listed just a sampling of the projects on the right-hand side, and I've superimposed it over the airport layout plan, which is the FAA-approved document. If something is not on this plan, you won't get money for it. So it's a really important plan. We update it about every year to 2 years. Down in the bottom left-hand corner is one of the big projects. It is the SAFE Complex. It's referred to as that because it's an acronym for the Strategic Academic Flight Education Complex. You'll notice that there's a big green area on the north side. Does everybody see that big green area? Okay, that's potential land acquisition north of the airport. And just to the left of that, you'll see kind of a salmon color or a peach color. Down below on the bottom left is actually a blow-up of that area, and you can see that yellow area in the bottom left photo. That is the new complex that Embry-Riddle just signed a lease about a month or two ago. They're investing $5 million initially. Over the long run, it could be into the tens of millions of dollars that they'll be investing. This is going to be particularly helpful. Do you remember the slide where I showed you the runway layout? If you're Embry-Riddle and you're on the south side of the airport right now, and you want to get to that second runway, the GA parallel, in order to do that, you actually have to cross the commercial service runway somewhere between 50 and 100,000 times a year. Not only is that a safety concern, but it also is an efficiency issue. The other thing is if we can get folks to the north runway, there's a pattern associated with the north runway I'll be showing you shortly, and it tends to balance out the overflight in the community, so there's a community benefit as well. James, did you have a question? Okay. So some of the other projects, 2 runway extensions, a new air traffic control tower. The FAA has already done the simulation on it. We participated in it. Up on the north side of the airport, the tower is anticipated to be designed in FY25, and it will be constructed in FY26. And that tower will be approximately 168 feet tall. In fact, it'll probably be, George, correct me if I'm wrong, the tallest occupied structure in all of Prescott. All of Yavapai County, 168 feet. They were actually looking at one other location that was 188 feet, but we settled on the 168 foot site. Once it gets above 120 feet, it requires redundancy and elevator and everything else, accessibility. That's going to be a pretty tall structure. That will be 100% funded by the FAA out of the Air Traffic Organization funds. There is no contribution locally for that. So as part of this, we're also going to be looking at land acquisition for protection, terminal expansion, ramp and taxiway rehabilitation, the possibility of an air park being developed in the pink area on the bottom right of the airport layout plan. We refer to that as the W because it looks like the shape of a W. FedEx is currently there. I'd like to dispel a myth. If you heard that FedEx was going to come in with 27 57s and operate an air cargo operation, by the way, those planes weigh about 255,000 pounds each. They would destroy our runway in about a week. So that is not an accurate rumor. I'm dispelling that rumor. Even though they built next to an airport, the building was designed to be a land facility, not an air facility. Is it possible they may operate some flights eventually? Yes, but not with 757s. Okay? All right. Then we also have navigational aids. We're going to have to relocate the instrument landing system as part of the runway extension. There's going to be road and infrastructure, an industrial commercial road that we are supporting. We're trying to be supportive of across the north side of the airport and around the end of the runway. Many other improvements, including an aircraft rescue and firefighting, or ARF station, and a snow removal storage facility, and additional expansion of the SAFE across the north side of the airport. Before I leave that's just 6 years. You guys hanging on and ready to go? Because we do have significant support. The money is not guaranteed until it's granted. You have to be able to make a compelling reason why your airport gets picked for this type of support over many others in the country that would like to see this. But I think you need to realize, obviously, that we are the only commercial service airport in all of Yavapai County. We have an important role as a regional resource. We're only one of 5 commercial service airports in all of northern Arizona. Communities would kill for a resource like this because not only does it generate great economic benefit, you know how the library said that people call before they move here and wonder about things that have to do with the library? We get the same calls. People want to know if we have air service. They want to know if there's hangars out there for rental. Right now, our rental wait list for hangars is 2 years for small hangars, 7 to 9 years for large hangars. People want hangars, and we are doing some private development to provide those hangars.
I have a question.
Yes.
Gary Warrup. So my history compels me to ask this question. Years ago, I managed a country club in Ohio. We had a buffer of a forest between us and the very small airport.
Yes.
The airport was strategically located that it didn't want to expand, but more businesses and more private pilots demanded more space. That country club does no longer exist because of the need for expansion. The noise became intolerable in the neighborhood. I don't know about planes and how quiet they can be or whatever. What is the future of noise for our area?
He's asking another great question.
It's a setup.
They're underestimating you.
I'm only allowed to.
You're only 3 slides away from the answer.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll get, because it's a really good question. So what I want to show here is one of those projects, and actually that does address in part one of the things you just brought up. The extension of the commercial service runway is meant for the one main reason, and that is because right now, because it is hot and we're at a high elevation, performance of aircraft is affected. It's not unsafe. It simply means it takes longer for the aircraft to be able to take off. As a result, in the summertime, there are challenges with the air carrier being able to take off. So the extension is for that reason. The U.S. Forest Service is a beneficiary, but if we go forward and say this is for the U.S. Forest Service first and foremost, the FAA would say, then the U.S. Forest Service can pay for this. And they do not have the same Airport and Airway Trust Fund to be able to accommodate that type of expansion. So they are a beneficiary. But one additional beneficiary, Gary, is that if you are actually, remember how I said that most of the traffic takes off to the southwest, 80%? If you take a look at this map and you move a quarter mile further away from those sensitive communities and you take off, what's going to happen when the aircraft is over those homes? It's going to be much higher. And as a result, the impact over those homes underneath will be mitigated. In fact, the aircraft may have already turned into the pattern and not even overfly those homes. So that's a real advantage of the runway extension that we get and our homeowners and our sensitive community members get if we're able to extend that runway. So that is one answer to the concern. I'll continue.
Let me ask a quick question, Jim.
Yes.
Does takeoff safety incorporated into that?
Actually, safety is a big issue. When you calculate what I'll show you later, which are impact zones, they don't change because the threshold at that end remains the same threshold, which means any aircraft can use the entire runway. And then at the end, that's where the impact zones we'll be discussing shortly come up. But in terms of an aircraft that takes off in the first, say, 1,000 to 2,000 feet, if I have an engine out and the runway is only currently 7,600 and change, if I get an extra quarter mile and that aircraft has trouble, there is a possibility the aircraft can still land right at the airport. And that would be ideal, to not even have them go out into the community. So that does help with safety, absolutely. So let's talk about the hot and high airport issue that I think, Andre, you had brought up, okay? Here's the interior of a CRJ-200 with 50 seats on board. If you look at the PM flights going out to Los Angeles every day, once we hit about 90 to 92 degrees, they have to block sail of up to 20 seats, which means when that aircraft takes off, it takes off with a 60% load factor. Only 60% of the seats can be filled. So that's a concern. The problem is if you want carriers to come in and serve Prescott, because of the short runway, they have to eliminate those seats. With the longer runway, they will be able to sell those seats. Gets us closer and closer to being off of essential air service and standing on our own 2 feet. Now, over the Easter weekend, that many seats had been blocked about a year ago, and they still had to buy another 6 seats at $1,000 a seat because the heat was higher than they expected, and not selling the 20 didn't work. They had to buy back 6 more. And if you want to go home and see Grandma over Easter, it's not good news. Now, some people are really excited when they get $1,000. They're like, I can go to Hawaii now because it's the airline future credit, vouchers. But you don't operate an airline off of that model, do you? You just can't. So we are one of the few airports in the nation that can, because we have a great market, extend that runway and be able to have those extra flights that we'd like to see in the future. There's another thing that was not anticipated a few years back. We just didn't have the level of sophistication at the time to understand that when an air carrier takes off, it has special requirements under the FAA for what's called a one-engine inoperative departure path. The usual evaluation process that looks at protecting the airport or the aircraft from obstructions does not apply to this process. It's a separate process that the carrier has to do. And when it takes off, you can see this is it going over Deepwell Ranch on the right-hand picture. And everywhere where you see the red in the picture is where there can be obstructions, no obstructions over ground level. So this was not anticipated in some of the airport protection elements of what was in the Deepwell Ranch Master Plan. And as a result, it does limit the ability to build. The only option you have is if somebody wants to build in these areas because those protections aren't in place, we can start taking more seats off the plane. How many more seats can we afford to take off the plane in terms of not selling them before it's no longer economically viable for carriers to be able to operate in and out of this airport? The splay you saw on this page right here is actually what we call a composite splay. It's comprised of all the critical aircraft that could operate out of this airport and that have operated historically out of this airport, even as a diversion airport from Flagstaff. So it's important to know that those are additional elements that perhaps were not considered when we were talking about protecting the airport in the way we understand it now. So as we move forward, one of the things we are doing is we're looking at some acquisitions. You'll see the areas in purple on our airport layout plan and our property map for potential acquisition. There's some other boxes. You can see those are kind of like hash mark boxes in blue. Those are additional areas that are under discussion right now in negotiations with some of the landowners. So these are some areas of acquisition that are of concern because they are a combination of either the airline splay, impact zones where airplanes typically are more susceptible for going down, and those noise impacts you mentioned earlier, Gary.
Robin, could you explain the color coding there again, please?
Sure. So the kind of purpley blue, those are on the airport layout plan for approach protection of the airports. Most of those involve some type of impact zone. They also would include some of the noise areas. And in fact, the ones off the commercial service runway also encompass some of the airline one-engine inoperative or OEI splay. The area in green on the north side of the airport is an area that will be likely the borrow source or the dirt source for the runway extension. As we extend the runway to the east or to the northeast, there's going to be a lot of fill as you're going down toward the wash. So that is going to come potentially from that green area. And there's also a state parcel up there. The areas in pink are already acquired by the city of Prescott. We currently own those pieces of land. And the yellow area off to your right is actually a 270-acre additional area that was part of the Arizona Eco Development 400 total acre commitment to protecting the future of the airport. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, it's currently owned by Arizona Eco Development to the right, but there's an obligation in that contract to complete that sale this year.
Did you say 400 acres?
It's approximately 400 in total acres, 270 in the yellow, and another 130 in the blue area next to the yellow. Okay, yes?
What's the orientation of these maps you've been showing us? Is there a north arrow I can't see?
Actually, it's just tip it up a little bit like this, and then you would be north. So just a little tip. It's just easier to see it as sort of,
yeah.
But it's just a little tip up on the right side, okay? So here it is tipped up. This is the actual public airport disclosure map that's required to be created by the state of Arizona and published. This actually has the noise contours associated with the 2021 actual flights, and it was produced in 2022 using FAA data. Now, what's important to note is that has not been adopted for zoning use, but that does actually, this is the most accurate representation of overflight. This is a contour that doesn't show single events, but what it does show, if I do this for you right now, if I take and make this noise and I average it out over 24 hours, and I take every single event of those events in the airport area, that's how those noise contours are created, is they average out those events over 24 and then over a year. So that's how they're created. Now, what I've also put up there are the older neighborhoods in purple, the newer neighborhoods in yellow, and the proposed neighborhoods in red. I think you can see where the airport is in the middle, and obviously this is a concern for the possibility of encroachment. So just to give you an idea, this is a one-day snapshot taken in February of this year that shows the flights between 6 a.m. in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the right-hand side are the noise concerns or complaints that we've received from 2019 through 2023. What's interesting is that, as you can see on the last column, there is often one complainer that constitutes somewhere between 40 and 60% of the total noise complaints. I know him personally, his family, his dog, but
I'll bet you do.
just kidding. But the idea is that we do have some regulars, if you will. And interestingly, some are further away from the airport than you may envision. I'd like to point out that, just to give you an idea, about halfway down the map is Highway 69 crossing the map. Can everybody see it? A little hard to see it. It shows you how far out overflight actually is in the Prescott area. But isn't this extraordinary? Anybody want a map for your wall? Let me know, okay? We do a lot in the community. We do education, we do engagement. I put up those signs. If you saw those green signs in entrance to Pinion Oak or along 89 or 89A, you can blame me. I thought it was really important that not only people who purchase homes learn about the proximity of the airport, but often renters do call us and say they had no idea how much impact there would be. There's also disclosures and easements, depending on where you're located. The requirement for a navigation easement in a pretty good size area has been in place since the early 2000s. It wasn't always uniformly enforced, but we are uniformly enforcing it and have been for the last few years. A few more. I'm almost done. So the next three slides kind of talk about here you are here in the general plan process. And what does this mean in terms of what you've just heard? Let me move forward just one slide and then I'll go backwards. In the voter-approved general plan, just so you know, the airport was referenced 145 times. So, if I'm going to cut to the chase, you don't need to reinvent the goals and the strategies. What we really need to do is reinforce, expand where missed, and act and implement the strategies that were there, including codifying the things that were suggested back in the 2015 voter-approved general plan. On the right-hand side, you can see I've given you the table of contents, and I've put in a blue arrow where the airport was mentioned, in a blue box surrounded by a green box where there was actually strategies and goals that were pertaining to the airport that really need to have some attention and, frankly, be implemented. And the two orange are where I think that there's probably opportunity for an airport goal, particularly open space, and that I think that there's opportunity to add in a strategy or a goal. So if you want my help on that, just let me know, because I've identified where they are by page number and I've got the pathway forward. As was mentioned earlier, you can see one of the concerns I have is the implementation or action weakness. That's page 3 of your general plan. And you can see there's some wording up there. It's a little bit hard to read, but essentially what it says is the plan is that the City Council, through its strategic planning process, will implement parts of the general plan. And because of that, it's not as strong as it should be, and perhaps that's something that you could put some attention toward, would be a plan for implementation. Now, if we go back one, this is the City Council strategic plan. There are 2 goals that relate to the airport. One goal relates to economic development, and clearly, when you consider an economic development study that includes the air park area, that's important to the airport itself. Also, a commercial corridor study, I believe, is very necessary for 89 and 89A. That's because we often have developers come in and go, oh, well, we didn't have any commercial interest, so let's go to homes. And my feeling is we want to give them some help to realize the commercial potential that's there, to assure that the compatibility then associated with that commercial potential could be realized. There's actually an entire City Council goal relating to the airport. Better utilize common regional interests, including public-private partnerships, collaborating with neighboring jurisdictions, and creating IGAs to protect the airport outside the current boundaries. Within 5 miles of the airport, there are 5 different jurisdictions, so it's important that we look at those other jurisdictions in protecting this asset and protecting the communities around there. We need to evaluate our land use strategies, our strategic land acquisition, and make sure we put in infrastructure that encourages industrial commercial development. Within the last 2 years, in the air park area south of the airport, there have been 28 sales. Industrial growth around the airport is hot. It doesn't need to be houses. There is interest in other types of compatible activity. Also, we want to bolster industry and business growth. And we'd like to make sure that when you update the general plan, that we also update and sync the airport-specific area plan, which is pointed to in the general plan as the guiding document around the airport. The airport master plan needs to be updated with all of these ideas that I brought up to you to make sure that we keep it in sync. The airport layout plan, if we want the money to fund the things on the airport. The economic development strategic plan that's going to be forthcoming. The commercial corridor study that I mentioned. Also, all of the transportation planning around the airport needs to be cohesive so it promotes the right type of development. We don't need cul-de-sacs and speed bumps if you're going to be driving a 40-foot wing of an airplane down on a FedEx truck. It's got to be the right type of infrastructure around the airport to support this being your continued economic generator. And then also the land development code. We need those changes codified. We've gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission and gotten the approval on the AVO. And the next step, once we complete these discussions on land around the airport, we need to take that back to council and codify the airport vicinity overlay district. So those protections are no longer suggestions, that they are codified like all the other things that are important.
Question, who owns the commercial land around the airport?
It's a variety of owners, including the city of Prescott.
Mostly private?
What's that?
Mostly private?
There is some private. Yes, there's quite a bit of private. And then, of course, the other big owner is the state of Arizona and the city of Prescott. Okay, I understand. So here's an example in the general plan. Apply compatible land uses within the airport impact zones and airport area, which permit continued responsible development and protect airport viability. These have been in place since 2015. Protect the airport from encroachment of incompatible land uses. Use the airport-specific area plan to reflect FAA guidelines and enforcement of land use designations. This is exactly what the Planning and Zoning Board had looked at, Commission had looked at. In addition, establish an airport area commercial employment zoning district, essentially a buffer. Like you mentioned, Gary, that buffer is important.
Yeah.
So this is the airport vicinity overlay and district, multiple public hearings, passage 5-1 by the Planning and Zoning Commission on December 8th, and the next step will be City Council. That includes a combination of the noise contours. It also shows the impact zones, and it also shows the airline splay. And in this picture, those are those impact zones. They're also referred to as crash zones. You can see these areas off the end of the runway are where we've had around 90 total aircraft go down in the history of this airport, an average of about one a year. And so those areas are where the highest risks are, and you can see down by impact zone the risk level. There really is no reason to be building a sensitive use in these areas, and certainly not a place of mass gathering. And you can see the goals. You can take some time to look at that. But what's important is the Airport Vicinity Overlay District was actually a combination of the 2009 Land Use Plan, the Airport Specific Area Plan, and the voter-approved general plan. It followed those very, very closely. And those plans were used in the development of that document. The reason you want to do this is not only for safety and for public health and welfare, but the fact is this is one of the biggest economic generators you have in all of Yavapai County. $194 million in economic impact as judged by an independent Arizona Department of Transportation study. 1,220 jobs. So with this kind of backing, and you have 308 tenants on the airport alone, along with the entire air park, it's enormous economic generating potential and more to come. And that's it.
Thank you, Robin. Gary, you have a comment or question?
Yes, well, I've already used up my 2 smart questions. So I have one semi-smart question, one smart-ass question. Robin, transportation is extremely important for the future of this area. I hope that it becomes predominant in our discussion in the general plan. Is there planning at all going on for some kind of transportation mode for the public to get to the airport without driving their own vehicles?
So you're referring to mass transit? That would be an integration. There's been some discussion of that. And in fact, our old terminal building could be used as a transit station. But I think that's something for you to address in the plan as well as we move forward. I think it's an inevitability that's going to be an important part of this community. And transportation planning needs to be forward-thinking. You build transportation access such that commercial industrial follows. If you don't, it's naturally going to default to incompatible uses and the inability to get all you can get out of this amazing resource.
Okay, now my smart-ass question.
Okay.
If you were coming to Prescott with the knowledge that you have and decided to choose a residential area to live in, where would you not move? And we're talking about...
You don't have to answer that question.
No, I want you to answer that question because to me it's really important for, especially us on planning and the general plan, what is the future of development in that area and where should it not be?
I actually think this is a really good question. Obviously, what we've done in the past is we've done a lot of projects where the landowner came to us with a really great idea. We supported the great idea. The idea is we have to look at it more as an area plan. And even though it may not be the ideal uses for all of these uncommitted areas, we have to look seriously at saying more holistically what the plan is for the entire area. The houses that are there. But what we can do is we can look at how do we build this resource and protect this resource and protect the community from adverse overflight and noise impact. And I think we can do that by going back and looking at the North Prescott master planning process that we had done last year, take a good look at that and incorporate elements of that into the general plan to assure that that compatibility will be considered as we move forward. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Terry Sapio.
I've got just a couple questions. The new tower, when that goes up, is it going to be open 24 hours a day?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So right now it's 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Because of the volume of operations, it is a candidate for another hour of opening. But right now throughout the nation, there's an air traffic controller shortage.
Just like pilot shortages.
Yeah. And so, for example, Gateway Tower, just so you know, Phoenix Mesa Gateway is a contract tower. And that tower, while a great private initiative because it's not operated by the FAA, there's congressional funding for staffing, but the actual tower is operated by the local entity. And then they get a grant for, or funds for operating that tower. They're actually having to shut down 4 extra hours a day because they can't get staffing in the private sector. So it's not like a private model works better than a public model. In this case, it's not. So they would not be open to a 24-hour scenario, likely.
Okay. Radar. Do we have approach radar in Prescott?
We are actually covered under the terminal radar control facilities that are based down in Phoenix. It's a TRACON. That's referred to terminal radar. And so we do have radar coverage. We're in a bit of a bowl. So because of that, you can't see every aircraft overflight when you run radar on it, but you can see a lot of it.
Okay. And speaking of shortages, the pilot shortage, you said there is a legislative option with the retirement age. Any discussion what that retirement age would be?
67.
67.
Yeah, they're thinking about moving it from 65 to 67. I know, so close, right?
Right. Okay.
However, the charter models don't have an age. So I told you some of the regionals are looking at that charter model.
Uh-huh.
They don't have that same cap as the network carriers
Okay, thanks.
because of the number of seats.
So you could be like Tom Brady and come out of retirement.
That's it. I'll tell you what, I I had some airlines call and say, "Do you have any talent you can give us?" And we'll bid Prescott. So, if you want to fly, I can hook you up.
Okay, I think I would probably age out of it. I just turned 70 this month, and a couple days after I turned 70, I wake up with this dream. Southwest Airlines scheduling is calling me and says, "Terry, we need you to run down to the airport. Go to gate Charlie 6. Go, 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 go. Don't stop at the pilot's lounge. Go." And I said, "You know I am 70 years old, right?" And the scheduler says, "We got a waiver from the FAA. Go, 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 go."
Was this a dream?
Yes.
Oh,
I used to
okay.
fly
All
for
right.
Southwest. And the thing is
I was just wondering
I've
if you had any
talked to
advanced
other
knowledge you
Southwest
wanted to share with
pilots,
me.
And every retired Southwest pilot has dreams about flying, but it's never about the flying itself. It's always about scheduling. It's like, so I still have.
Well, just some parting thoughts. You have anything else, Chairman?
Well, first I'm going to cut him off.
Okay.
Because I want to go on and on.
He's had 2 drinks. We're done. No, kidding, Terry.
I just wanted to comment that, and this goes back to JD's comments about the general plan. And I think you covered this very adroitly. The 2015 general plan covered the airport, and it was a decision by the council in 2017 that made this situation that we have now. That's why Ralph has tried to get it into the charter, and I think as we evolve this process, we need to be more diligent to make sure that if we spend 3 years, 11 people spend 3 years, and the city votes on it, but we ought to have a little more emphasis on following the general plan.
I concur. Thank you.
Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Hess. My question is, can we get a copy of this presentation, and specifically, if we can't get the whole thing, get the portions that refer to the 2015 general plan and your recommendations as to how those portions should be modified or adapted for the plan that we're working on?
I'm at your service. Whatever you'd like, I'd be happy to do that. If anybody wants the full set on the way out, you can grab it. I brought it for.
Tammy's going to record.
Okay. Some people like hard copy.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. It's yours.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Robin. I'll be booking my flights.
You'll be booking. Well, I'm flying out in September, so
I'm
they
going
can't
to
get.
call a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
Good call. We've got 2 hours of work left.
So next on our agenda is discussion and presentation regarding materials for the upcoming open house events. So we're going to have our open house in August. So instead of having a meeting, we're going to be at the Rollie Simmons Adult Center, and we're going to have an open house. We're going to start setting up at 2 o'clock, and then we have it advertised from 3 to 6. So what we included in your packet was some boards, some question boards that we're going to be putting up around the room to ask the public for their comment. So, wrong way. Wrong way. Okay. So this was all in your packet. So these are sized to be 24 by 36, and they fit on the cardboard boards that we can place around the room, or we can put these up on the walls or have them on tables, and we have some different ideas of what we're going to do. So what we're asking the public is for strengths and challenges for each of these different departments or categories. So the first one is public facilities and services, and what we'll do is on the top we'll put what that is. That includes fire, police, library, hospitals, community center, and public facilities. But gosh. So the idea is that what we did, and these can be changed or added to, we could add more, or we can change them if you don't agree to it, is that to give the public some ideas of what we're looking for, and then they'll have the sticky notes that you always see at these meetings, is that they can add additional ideas, additional strengths and challenges that they know of or that they're concerned about. And then they'll have the green and red dots where they can put whether they agree or disagree. And then we're going to summarize that after the meeting. So for strengths, we have maintenance program for roads, great police force, a great library facility and programs, which you heard about today. And then we have the senior center. Is there any other strengths that the committee members think that we should add on to this? Or any other ideas? And the idea is that we're going to bring these back to you next month, finalize it to make sure we've captured everything. Yes?
Don Michaelman. Would a strength, now this, what I'm thinking about is like the courthouse, but that's county. But around the square is a strength that a lot of people come here for.
Okay, yes, courthouse, okay. We could add that. Courthouse Plaza. Are there any other strengths that anyone can think of? Yes.
Hi, Mary Frederickson. Actually, I don't know if this would be just strengths or strengths and challenges. Both for the police force and the fire, I would add fire to that as well. That they're both great forces, but there's the staffing issue for both of them, as well as the idea of the need for additional fire stations.
And we had that under challenges, difficulty attracting and retaining city staff. I mean, that's a challenge for all the public buildings, including the library, such that you heard of.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I guess just specifically people, the public, I think are particularly attracted to the idea of needing sufficient police and fire, since that's the thing that's going to be most likely to impact them directly.
Okay, I will add police and fire to that.
Since we just had a presentation from them, how about the airport?
Okay, what would be, is that a strength? The airport?
Yeah, it's an economic engine for the city.
Okay.
As well as being a challenge, as Robin just laid out,
Yeah.
the challenges that come from that.
And then pilot shortage. Okay. Okay. Anything else in regards to public facilities and services?
Like, this may not fall in this category, hiking trails and.
That'd be an
outdoor-
open space. Yeah. I got that. Yeah. Okay. So, and we'll go over these again next month where you can add more. So next is economic development, which you heard a few months ago. And I took some of this stuff from their presentation. So a couple of the strengths were opportunities for growth with vacant land for development in unused buildings, such as the mall property is ripe for redevelopment and they have new owners. We also have North Prescott. So, and then another strength, the city staff are motivated and supportive of economic growth opportunities that make sense for Prescott. And that's what we heard from the economic development folks, is that they're trying to bring in businesses that make sense for Prescott, not for Phoenix, not for the South, but for Prescott. So are there any other strengths that you could think of to get people thinking about or what we could add to this? And if you think about this later, you can email them to me, so we'll have them for next meeting. So,
Please do email us.
yes. So, and these are things, like I said, we can add on to. And then the challenges, based on what was given by John, was existing commercial real estate does not meet modern needs for a move-in ready space. Some of the stuff that you are seeing out by the airport, they're shell buildings, and then they have to come in and get permits to finish them out. And then we also have, like downtown with some of the historic buildings, they may not be able to meet their full capacity because of code requirements and stuff. They're not move-in ready. So another challenge was a lack of affordable workforce housing. We're going to hear that throughout the state, throughout the whole thing. And then needing more businesses to create more jobs. Anything? Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Hess. This is actually general in nature, and it relates back to James's question about putting trails in the earlier category, where it actually is going to be referenced in the open space and recreational category. And I'm thinking here in economic development strengths, we just heard about how the airport's an economic development strength. When we have these aspects that overlap so that they could actually be in more than one category, do we want to perhaps put them in both categories?
We could,
Yeah.
yes. So we can add that for the trails, for strengths trails. So the expansion of airport services is a strength.
Can I comment about the first box with roads, a challenge in trying to include bike lanes?
Bike lanes, okay. Trails and bike lanes. And that would be a challenge or?
Probably is.
Okay. Back to where we were. Okay.
I have one also.
Sure.
Resistance to growth.
Tammy, I've got a question too.
Okay.
When for the public, when they come to this open house, ask everybody, what do you think the current annual growth rate for Prescott is?
That is a great comment. So yesterday we were discussing this actually with Chair Gambogi about he had been hearing from some people that were saying that, you know, or they're saying that Prescott's grown by 25% a year or something, you know. We're like, well, the math doesn't add up.
Right.
So we were going to put together another board that says for when they first walk in, did you know? And that was one of the things. Like, did you know the growth rate of Prescott has only been like 1.8%, you know, over the last 10 years and things like that, and have the numbers up there for the last 30 years or something of how it's grown. And different comments like that. We've already been brainstorming some ideas to bring back to you for, did you know, to have at the beginning that when they walk in, they could see this, and a lot of people don't know those type of facts. That was
And the thing is that the real shock for the public is if I ask them first what they think it is, and then I tell them what it really is, they're going, no, can't be. Because when I ask people, what do you think the growth rate of Prescott is? I almost never get a number that's less than 10%. And then when I say, well, it's really running about 1.2, 1.3% per year compounded, and they go, no, that's not possible. I said, yes, that's what it really is. And they say, well, where's all these cars on the roads and everything coming from? I said, it's not coming from Prescott because it's only 1.2 to 1.3% in Prescott. So I think that will be a big eye-opener for the public when they come to that realization.
And what we could probably do with that is also put, this is the growth rate of Prescott Valley, and take the numbers out of their general plan. Oh, wait, I already did that at the home show when everybody was complaining about, I'm like, actually, that's Prescott Valley. They're right there. So.
Tammy?
I was at a meeting last night and I asked that question. I got three estimates, 80, 40, and 27.
That's interesting. Tammy? I want to piggyback on James. Would it be possible to invite, since you talked about bike trails or biking, some of the representative agencies like the Bike Prescott, PIMBA, or any of those, so they could be there as well?
If you want to invite them or they can be there to answer questions, I'm going to ask city staff from the different departments if they can be there,
Yeah.
because it is during city time.
I think that'd be really important.
We're going to try to do that. I'll be discussing that with them next week.
But I would ask every member, if you have an idea like that, then invite them, because we want people to show up.
And then people to be the professional side of it, since I'm not a professional biker, to be there to answer questions that we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Are you talking about being at the open house as a resource?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so next was land use. So some of the strengths were lots of space in North Prescott to attract new businesses. not residences, businesses. Historic downtown is town center, because that is an asset that we have and a strength. I added on there 1.8% growth rate, just to put it on there, that's a strength that we have. We're growing slower. Is there any other strengths you could think of for land use that we may want to add?
I would certainly list the airport on that.
Airport, okay. Airport. And here we could put open space and trails,
Yes.
because that's, okay.
All three.
Open space and trails.
Well, anybody, you'll be there, save the bells.
Are there anything else I may be, and like I said, you can email them to me later if you think of it later.
Tammy, although it's covered under the umbrella of what you just mentioned, open trails, open space trails. And I don't know where it is in the process as far as being developed, but the gateway to the Granite Hills Regional Park.
The regional park, okay. Great. Regional park. Okay. Okay. And then we'll go on to challenges. So one of the big challenges we always hear about is development of state trust land is unpredictable. We don't know who it's going to sell to or what they're going to propose on it. So that is a challenge. Lack of commercial services in North Prescott area. It's a food desert up there. There's no restaurants. There's no shopping, no grocery store, which we've been working with economic development for, but that's a challenge that we have in North Prescott. And lacking housing options is another.
And I think along with the lack of housing options, you know, everyone's always concerned about affordable housing and where's the housing going to be. Unit 9, Yavapai Hills, there's talk about trying to add that to the regional park, which would fit right in with the rest of the open space. But if you take away those 1,819 houses or residences from Unit 9, where are those people going to be? You know, if you take those houses away, where can you replace them in another location? And that would be a challenge, is where can we find space for people to find a house in Prescott, and ideally an affordable house in Prescott.
Okay. Ralph?
Ralph Hess. This is another one of those places where I think where you have nominal public transportation in circulation, you might want to put it here in land use as well.
Okay. Great comments, you guys.
Jim Huffman, again, I'm going to put the airport on there because land use maps have to be protective of the airport property.
Protection of airport.
Yes. It's both. That's correct, George.
So this would be the protection of airport. Okay. Okay. So what we're also going to include, so we have this is an updated zoning map with up to date right now with all the current, everything that's been annexed and rezoned in the city. So we'll have that with the board for the land use. And we also have the 2015 land use general plan map that shows where we anticipated growth boundaries and anticipated land uses. So we'll have that with it. And these are going to be a lot bigger so you can see it. And then we also, which we found has been really useful and really interesting for the public to see, is an annexation history map. So people could see when certain areas were annexed into the city, which a lot of people think it may have been more recent, and they're going to see this and realize that it was actually a lot longer than they thought. So we're going to have that with the land use board. So next is circulation, which is the movement of people and goods. And we'll add that too, that the circulation is the movement of people and goods. So the strengths somewhat is easy to navigate streets, or somewhat easy. Community focus on prioritizing improvements, because the Public Works Department is always working on improving our roads. And State Route 89 and 69 provide easy access to adjacent communities, somewhat easy. So is there any other strengths to our transportation network that we may have? We definitely know there are challenges. We do have limited Uber and taxi service in the area. We don't have a public transit system in Prescott, which is being talked about a lot and being looked at by the SIMPO staff. And state road funding's constantly being swept at the state level. They're always sweeping our shared funds for road improvements. So that is a challenge that we have in the state.
Tammy, do we want to add in increased amount of traffic in the last couple of years as a challenge?
Traffic, sure. From what we've heard, we're seeing 100,000 people come in a day. Was it 100,000 people? Yeah, 100,000 people a day coming into Prescott. You know, I mean, that's a lot of traffic.
I remember Vinny saying there's 45,000 on.
That's our population.
69.
Well, that's
no, 45,000 on 69. So where are the other 55 coming from?
north.
Is that
89A, I mean, that's just 69, but you have the outer loop coming in off of Fane Road coming in, and you also have from up north, and you have Iron Springs coming in, and from the south, people coming down from Peoples Valley and stuff to work up here. Work, doctors, shopping. I mean, you got to remember, if you go Prescott Valley East, Prescott Valley East, there are no groceries. If you look at Prescott Valley East of Prescott Valley, there are no grocery stores. So, I mean, there's a lot of things coming in.
Hey, I don't know what the rest of the committee would think, but what in my conversations with SIMPO, and this covers a lot of things that we talk about. I talk about Prescott being an island. We're 40 miles from any interstate. Mm-hmm. And that because of that, we're relying on 89. We're basically relying on 89 to go nowhere, and then everything else go 69 to get to Phoenix. So is there fertile discussion on saying accessing the interstates? I mean, accessing the interstate doesn't mean you have to go to 69. Accessing the interstates may mean in a big general plan, we come up with some better way to get to 17 and 40.
Well, 89 north is the only way to 40. I mean, straight.
So I would, to put it in a box, I'd say access to interstates.
Okay.
Tammy, Mary
Yes.
Fredrickson. Under challenges, and I just saw it in the paper today or yesterday, the expansion of 89, speaking of 89, through the Dells. And when that happens, if that happens, I'm assuming it will happen because there's really not much choice, the impact on traffic and circulation when that work gets underway. All the people that come into Prescott from the north, as the expansion of 89 through the Dells is happening, where are they going to go?
Willow Creek Road and Iron Springs.
Yes, what else?
Okay. Think we got that one a little bit? Wow, I keep hitting the wrong button here. Okay, so the other one we're talking about is workforce housing. So this one is a little bit different. Why is mine gone? Okay, so community input tells us there is a need for workforce housing. We hear this throughout the country right now. Oh, thank you. I don't know what happened to mine. So we came up with 4 different types of options of housing, which we typically see. First, you have apartments. So what they're going to do, and we're going to clarify this a little bit, that for a green dot for areas that you think we need to expand on, and red dot if you disagree. So one is apartments. An apartment is a residence that is rented often as part of a larger residential building. Townhomes are attached to one another with each having at least one shared wall with adjacent townhomes and can have ownership instead of renting, because these can be platted for ownerships. Then we have the accessory dwelling units. The city of Prescott already allows this, and this is something that the state's pushing is to require us to allow them. So we're already ahead of that. We allow them, but they just can't be rented except for short-term rentals. So we've already been looking at allowing these to be rented long-term, but we want to make sure that's something the community would also want to see before we start bringing something for our land development code. And additional areas for manufactured housing. So included is this map, and I know you can't see it very well, but there's some red hatch areas. There aren't that very many areas in the city of Prescott allow for manufactured homes. Many of them are existing manufactured home parks, and then there's the area along Willow Lake Road that has that existing manufactured home park and area. But there's really no place else in the city of Prescott to allow for manufactured homes. There was a bill this last year that was trying to push to require us to allow it anywhere in the city unless there's deed restrictions. So we are looking at, is there areas, we're going to ask if there's areas that they would like to see or be able to allow for manufactured homes. That's something we've been looking at, and the workforce housing group will be looking at.
Tammy, you don't have a page for strengths and challenges for this affordable housing.
No, we're just looking what kind of housing would they like to see.
I would say as a challenge, I'd like to get a definition of what is affordable.
We will see what we can find for that.
What is
the the workforce housing is something that we have that's affordable, is market driven, probably, that we hear all the time at planning and zoning and city council with the apartments coming in. Are these affordable housing? And they're saying they're just going to be market value.
Well, I remember when Clark Kennedy made his proposal to the Planning Commission, he said the goal was to have the apartment rent be no more than 30% of the teacher's salary. And if that's affordable housing, I'm okay with that. But we get proposals in the Planning Commission all the time for something that vaguely represents affordable housing, and we don't know if it works or not works, because I think we got to get some definition that says it's like Clark Kennedy, it's 30% of a teacher's salary or a fireman's salary or a policeman's salary.
Tammy?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you want to add a fifth category of co-op houses?
Co-op houses?
Or is that going to take too much explanation to the public on what that means?
We don't have much in town, so that would be something we would need to explain.
Tammy, Terry Sapio, your last slide had the accessory dwelling units. Durango, Colorado is very similar to Prescott with its housing prices being excessive, and they do permit long-term accessory dwelling unit rentals there. They're very popular, especially with the the bartenders, the waitresses, the working people in town that
the service industry.
Service industry, right? Trying to make ends meet, and they almost all have 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. The accessory dwelling units are very popular because they're generally less expensive than the commercial rentals, and the long-term accessory dwelling units are also popular with the property owners because they can, at low cost, add an ADU over a garage or one of these tiny homes if the lot is big enough, which around here we call them mother-in-law residences. Well, the mother-in-law residences in Prescott are accessory dwelling units in Durango, and I think that would help with our affordability of housing in Prescott.
Tucson, we went to a land use law update a couple weeks ago, and there was a talk about that. In Tucson, it's been very popular down there. They just allowed it a couple of years ago, I think. And then there's other Flagstaff's looking at doing that too. We allow them in any residential district. It's just right now they can't be used for long-term rentals. But that is something we've already discussed with the Planning and Zoning Commission a couple of times and the City Council, and they've been pretty favorable of it. But we want to make sure that's something that the citizens want to. So we're going to add that.
So what was the reason for limiting the duration of rentals?
For guests, for accessory dwelling.
Right.
Because they're accessory buildings and they aren't primary uses. So even in the county, they can't be rented. They may have changed that recently. I haven't seen anything, but they also couldn't be rented because they're guest houses for overflow guests. That was the intent. Yeah, and it is single family zoning, so it's for one family. So you can't rent it. You have a family member live in it full time, or Boomerang. We have multi-generational, and they could stay in there. They just can't rent it to not. They can have it for non-paying guests, technically. But how do you prove that? So we already see it happening. I mean, it's happening anyways, but we want to codify it to make sure it's legal.
So is there a fear of renting it to Joe Blow for a year? I mean.
It just becomes more like multifamily housing than single family. So, yeah. We're trying to maintain the single family zoning as much as the state and the feds will allow us, because it is starting to come down the pipeline that we're going to start seeing the single family possibly going away. So it'll be forced into that. So we're trying to get ahead of that a little bit as much as possible.
Ralph Hess. Do we want to add something that's just like a blank box so that if the public has any suggestion as to an alternative form of affordable housing that's not in one of the boxes that we give them to choose from, that we can get information about what they think might be affordable housing? And to follow up on Ted's comment, I think it might be a good idea to get ideas from the public as to what their perception is of what affordable housing would be. If we could put a question out there like that.
Okay. Great comment, you guys. Okay. Go ahead.
Rod Moyer, I think we need to, among the things we need to decide is whether we're going to use the term affordable housing or workforce housing.
Well, we have a workforce housing committee, so we're going to keep it to workforce housing to maintain that. Because that's really what we're looking for, is the workforce housing for people that want to work here and live here. So.
Yeah, the confusion of affordable is all housing is affordable to someone.
And
just not the city staff.
one thing I would invoke the Terry Sapio concept of when regardless of what you call it, it's a physical structure. However, there could be financial ways to produce affordable housing, like.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, he's
lease purchase, down payments.
Sure. And that's something that we're discussing with the Workforce Housing Committee to come up with some ideas like that to put in the general plan.
Have they discussed any possibility of like lease purchase contracts? In fact, that's how I bought my home here in Prescott. I couldn't afford a house when I moved to Prescott in 1987, and the people I bought the house from were super nice people, and they suggested a lease purchase contract, and I didn't know what it was, but it made it possible for me to buy the house, and it worked out great.
And that's something they're discussing with the Workforce Housing Committee as options, and they'll be providing those type of options for the general plan.
Okay.
For the housing element. Yeah.
This is just about the open house right now.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. This is about the open house, but ask. In the open house, ask people, do you own a house in Prescott? If not, would you like to own a house in Prescott? And what are the barriers to you owning a house in Prescott? And I think the biggest barriers are obviously price, monthly payment, and down payment. And like the lease purchase falls into the down payment portion of those three barriers.
So we have those. That is actually a couple of the survey questions that we have. So we are still leading people to that survey because those are the type questions we have already on there for asking people.
The wooden lease purchase, you're going to have to go to the individual. That's not something the government can do.
Well, you know, I was thinking about that, and if you could get some of the lenders involved in that, where they would work with the property owner on a lease purchase contract and the down payment. Also, another way is workforce housing for the city, where we could say, we want you to be a teacher in Prescott or a fireman or a policeman or something like that. And we know that housing is a barrier. We could say, for each year that you are say employed at with Prescott, we would forgive a certain portion of your down payment for a house. We would help you with that down payment, and then each year a certain percent of
We
the down payment.
need
we
to
help
kind
you
of stick.
goes away.
We're on a tight schedule
Okay.
now, and we kind of need to stick. But these are
but there
great
are-
ideas for
yeah.
talking about when we talk about housing.
But there's a variety of ways to try to overcome the three barriers:
I don't
down payment, monthly payment, and total cost.
And these are things that we can talk about with the housing when we talk about that element. But that's a great idea, though, for that. Okay. So next is open space and recreation. So some of the strengths with that was regional, because you heard this from just last month. So we have regional cooperation, that's a strength. Increased market share of ecotourism, public-private partnerships, state and federal partnerships, private donors, and state parks grants. I guess trail system.
So under weaknesses for that, having been involved with the Overhill Gang for 14 years, who's going to maintain them?
Maintenance of trails.
How are we going to pay for that?
Okay, maintenance of trails. Trails. Any other strengths? The strengths of the trail system. Okay. And then the challenges were maintenance of trails, we'll add that. Competition for city funding with other departments, state legislative actions, and staffing levels. That goes with the maintenance of trails. Okay.
Tammy,
Yes.
just my thought when I saw regional cooperation under strength, I would have put that under challenges.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, according to when we did the presentation we had last week, we do have a lot because we do have IGAs with Prescott Valley for the regional park. Then we also have IGAs with the Forest Service for the city does a lot of the work, so because the Forest Service doesn't have it and they don't have to go through all the clearances for some of that.
Yeah, but a lot of that just depends on volunteerism. So we're back to square one. You know, I'm going to be 80 and half the Overhill Gang is in their 70s and that. Who's going to take up the slack?
More over the hill, yeah.
Could another challenge be just the marketplace competition with commercial?
Competition with commercial. Okay.
I'm going to have 20 and 5
Tammy, I guess I was specifically thinking about the IGA as a challenge. Just reading in the paper, Prescott Valley's plan for the east side of Glassford Hill with the ski lift to the top and all the development they're projecting to put forward there. I don't know how the IGA might limit their ability to do that, but they certainly seem to be forging on ahead.
Okay, perfect.
Regardless of any IGA.
Yeah.
Ralph Hess, might be a good idea to put it regional cooperation in both a strength and a challenge.
Yep, I have that there to add. Okay. Anything else for strength or a challenge? Okay. We're getting through this. So we have the open space and trails map. This is an updated one. with all our current open space and recreation areas.
Ralph Hess.
Sure.
Lack of funding, or just put funding maybe
That's-
as a challenge.
Yeah, we have competition for Cindy funding or then other funding. Just funding.
And Tammy, if you want, I will bring, I'll get permission, bring a box of trail maps and all that to hand out. People like to go home with something.
Yeah. We also have lots of swag left too, so hand out. So are there any other topics? So these are the ones we have: public facilities and services, economic development, land use, circulation, workforce housing, open space, and recreation. Is there anything else that you think that we may be missing that we want to ask at this time? There are going to be other open houses later as we start getting, and then we can also reach out to the public with either surveys or just questions to ask people.
So I'd kind of like to see it different growth by itself.
Okay.
Would putting water up there?
That's
a
a deep,
touchy
that's a
subject.
deep subject, man.
Yeah, drown in it.
Yeah, and with the water policy, there's not a whole lot we could do with water. So, I mean, there's challenges, but we're good. Yeah, we'll add it to growth because that's going to affect the growth. So we'll add something about water in that.
Yeah, I think
that
we
will
need to
capture it.
because, you know, you're looking at the debates right now with the city council and the CWAG one. The conversation is long-term plans for water. And that's what a general plan is, a long-term plan.
Definitely. So we'll add that with growth, be growth in water.
Well, you can't talk growth without water in this neck of the woods, so I'd say yes.
Put them together, growth and water.
Tammy, Mary Frederickson. I would just say in general, we don't want to overwhelm at this open house and have so many boards, so many issues that people will just glaze over. So, you know, there's the desire to put out everything in this first open house, and we may want to cherry pick a little bit.
This is pretty typical from what we've seen and looking what Prescott Valley did and what Chino Valley did. So we're being pretty consistent with the other close by areas that have done theirs, and that's kind of where we got these topics. So, but growth and water, that we can definitely add to that, being in the AMA.
I think it's gives people an educational opportunity to see all these areas. So it's a lot, but it might be eye-opening for them too.
No, I'm not suggesting that any of these ideas should be cut. I'm just
No.
saying, in general,
Yeah.
we should keep an eye on how much people can take in without just like, I'm out of here and leaving.
Yeah. So I will update the boards and we'll bring them back to the next meeting. And then we can also, if there's anything you want to add, that'll be the time to do it.
What's the open house? Let us know ahead.
August 28th, 30th, August 30th. So it'll be the last Wednesday. So instead of having a meeting, the general plan, we're going to do the open house. What we start setting up at 2 o'clock at the Rollie Simmons Event Center. I mean, huh? 2 to 6. So the public will be 3 to 6. We have an hour to set up.
And George is cooking.
We want people to come back.
Okay.
Are we going to have name tags?
We can make name tags for you guys if you like, for general plan committee members. Definitely, we can make those. Yep.
Stand out underground.
Yep. Okay. So next on our discussion, where are we at? Okay, we got some time. So you guys had some homework assignments. What was asked to bring forward was what topics would the committee like to discuss in smaller breakout groups, pending time.
Do you want our responses?
Yes.
Okay, I have 5. Growth, and I separate water from that for sure. Transportation, medical, and legal.
Legal?
Yeah, I need to tell the committee I have been talking with several doctors, representatives in Prescott, and they are actually eager to at some point in the future come and talk to us. I did meet with, I hate to use his name Ascari's right-hand person at one time, and he would love to come and talk to us. He said I could bring 2 banner representatives who still would like to see that facility, that land use for that. So I think medical is extremely important for the future.
What would be your goal of having them come and talk?
Well, as an aging person and talking to people my age, we're very insecure with medical here. And I would like to know that there is a future for improvements, for expansion, and what that is. I think the public should know that if you're going to move here or are here, you're going to be taken care of in one way or the other. Or if not, then why are you here?
I think Gary's got a good point. I got this other part-time job where I go to all these forums, and one of the most popular questions is about medical. What are we going to do to fix medical?
And that's been a comment that I've gotten over email too, was the lack of doctors in the area.
And they're leaving. I've gone through 4 that just said, I don't want to be here anymore, or they go to the VA. How many just have gone, I'm not a veteran, so I'm not eligible to go there. But it is a monster concern. We talk about it all the time in my household. And how long does it take to get an appointment? And if you have an emergency, I don't have to tell anybody who's an employee of the city that you just had a panic attack with not being able to go to Dignity because your insurance wasn't going to be covered. So what is the future here and people's concern? If we're going to involve the public, everyone in the public has a health concern.
So what's your 5th one? Yeah, growth, transportation, medical, and legal.
Legal.
That's 4.
So are you talking
said
about
5.
Growth, water,
Oh, water, okay.
transportation, medical, and legal.
Okay.
And what I would suggest from a tactical perspective is you have your breakout group, because James' question is good, and we don't know what they would say, but you want to have a breakout group, come up with a recommendation to the full committee, and tell us why someone would want to come talk to us, because I think we should be receptive to that. We just want to know what the mission is.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just for the discussion to keep moving, there's a possibility of doing breakout groups earlier, or as we start working on the actual text of each of the elements, that may be a better time for that to occur when we're starting to actually see text and you're reviewing it and making modifications to it.
Yep. Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question? Quick question. Your last item was legal? Okay, I'm puzzled. What would that entail?
Well, I brought it up before. I don't think that we've even touched on the legalities of, or the public needs to know is what teeth does a general plan have legally, and where can we go in the future to put teeth in that if we can't do it now? How do we discuss that, and how do we bring it to council and say, hey, look, we just spent 3 years for what? How can we enforce more and more? I know you brought up some things, but I don't feel confident that 3 years here will come to the public and say, this is what you're going to get. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. But I have studied legal stuff, of course. But I want to know, where can we go in the future to put teeth in the general plan and in the public's perception of where we should go?
We could talk about that. Okay. Okay. Any other topics that?
One thought: some of the new elements that we have to include because of our population growth.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So is there any other smaller breakout groups?
What about traffic?
Traffic? Well, he had transportation. So it's traffic and traffic.
Oh, and growth.
Yeah. And yeah, that's all kind of combined. Yep.
Ralph Hess, yeah, I'd still like to get some confirmation from Joe Young or the legal department about how we would be able to conduct these small breakout sessions and still comply with the open meeting law.
Sure, we can do that. Okay. So the second question is, what would be the overall scope for retaining an outside facilitator? So as staff, we discussed it internally for what we feel that we could get out of, not a facilitator, but from a consulting firm. So if any of you watched the study session yesterday for City Council on the widening of 89, besides that discussion, but the tool they're using. So the Public Works has PR firms that they have under contract or retain and that we can use. So what I need from a consultant that I need help with, that we discussed it and I had to sit down and go, really, what do I need help with? First off is to consolidate the public comment. That does take a lot of time when we have all the surveys and the open house and what's coming in via email and everything. Someone to go through all that and consolidate it. To help create the draft plan for the 60-day comment period in public hearings. That does take a lot of time. I've done it for 3 plans, and it takes a lot of time. So if I could get help with that, mostly for someone that has the technology and the programs to really make a nice plan, because we'd like to see an award out of this, maybe. Okay.
This bonus is dependent upon an award.
Yeah. Anyway. And create an e-reader version of the plan. You have to have certain programs to do that, because I've been looking into it. But some of these consultants do have these programs, and they have staff that's all they do. So we're going to look into that. And to help provide information for public outreach for the election, for the 60-day comment period and the election, to help get that out. So we are looking into that. We have the information from Public Works. They have 3 PR firms. And so we're going to reach out to them and see which ones would be able to, we have money set aside for this to see who can help us with this. So we are going to reach out for consultants. And but the question that came to us at the last meeting was, what would be the overall scope for retaining an outside facilitator? So does anybody have any thoughts about what we would get out of having an outside facilitator?
Terry Sapio. I have to agree with JD from the public comments at the very beginning when she came up and talked about us going round and round and round on minutia. I agree with her 100%. We're now, 10 months into this? And personally, I think we've already had a vote on an outside facilitator, and we voted it down at that time, and I think the vote would probably be the same. I think we have a very capable city staff that are doing an excellent job, and the communications, I think, is excellent. And we burn up a lot of time talking about organization over and over and over and over again. I think right now, this whole thing, the way we have it set up, is working very good. We have a good exchange of ideas back and forth. And in fact, items 1 and 2, the smaller breakout groups, I think we have our smaller breakout group right here. And if you want to invite guests to talk about one topic or another, I think we'd all be interested in hearing what they have to say and exchange ideas back and forth. So I think what we have right now is working great, and we need to just press on and continue with the public input, and then in 23, and then the actual writing of the general plan in 24 and presenting it to the public in 25. I think we can just continue with what we're doing.
Yes.
Rod Moyer. Yeah, if you're talking about facilitating these meetings, I think we've got our format. I'm totally happy with what's been going on here. If you're talking about the other help you need, then I agree with you. You need some outside help for those things that you enumerated.
She needs help. It's not us giving
Okay.
facility.
Yes.
Yeah, Ralph Hess. Well, yeah, I was the one who was promoting the need for a facilitator, and until recently, I had not seen that presentation regarding the respective roles of the committee members and staff, because the one meeting I missed was the September 28th meeting where that presentation was made. And I was of the understanding that the roles of the committee and the staff were different than what were set forth in that presentation. And the reason I was requesting a facilitator is because I thought that committee members were going to have more of a role with respect to developing the elements of the plan and more of the exactly what you're talking about with regard to seeking help from a consultant. And once I read the recently provided to me presentation of the September 28th presentation regarding roles, our role is pretty much limited to collecting information from the public regarding vision, prioritizing it, and working with the vision, which is actually one section of the 2015, not even a full section, it's one part of a section, one section of the 2015 plan. So had I known that those were the respective roles, I would never even suggest that we need a facilitator, because a lot of what I saw as a disconnect was because I was expecting the committee to be charged with doing more than we're actually being asked to do. So I don't think we need a facilitator. And I think your idea for the need of a consultant is fine.
So do we have a motion?
No, or no.
No, the motion for the consultant to help Tammy put this work together.
Oh, do we need that?
Do we need him?
I don't think we need that.
Okay.
Okay, so, Tammy, I have a comment. I'm extremely proud of where we've evolved to. It took a while, and I'm extremely more proud of the professionalism of staff and the process that we're now using to bring in a representative from departments. I begged for that last general plan. This time it's happening. I don't think there's emphasis enough on the professionalism of staff in Prescott. The years I've been here, I can't tell you how many times people think I work for the city sometimes. I've been called and asked to come and say, nobody's listening to me in my position. I think that's changing with the new council and with the new attitudes, and I see it in this plan. So I'm very proud of where we progressed and that we are bringing in a department representative. Today was not exceptional. It was beyond exceptional for the professionalism. So we didn't need another facilitator. We're doing a great job here all together, and I'm happy to be part of that. I would like to recommend Ted and he's not here, the interviews for water with CWAG. I didn't hear anybody running for office talk about the professionalism and staff. They're the ones really doing the work. We don't need 100 more committees. We need to bring in our staff and have them tell us where we should be going. I'm anxious for September because I'm the water guy. To hear Matt Killeen, one of the best I've ever met, and progressive in ways that no other communities are doing. We need to be the next Tucson for water, and we have people to bring us there.
Actually, it's next month.
It's what?
Water's next month.
Next month. Oh.
Yeah, July.
Okay, so can we move on?
Okay, wait.
One more comment, just to add on to what Mr. Hess said. There is an additional requirement of the committee. We need you to review the elements and give input into those. So we're going to give you a draft of them, but that draft is generated by staff from staff's perspective. We need all of you to put information in, look at it, make sure that it actually makes sense, that the public, when they read it, will be able to use it. Future generations of folks here would be able to use it. So that's an important piece that we need you for.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, number 3 was discuss ideas for additional public outreach and messaging. I know Chair Gambogi has been handing out flyers like crazy at all your
Hundreds
events.
of flyers.
And we've handed out a bunch at Earth Day, at the home show. We have them at the counters here. Another thing we're putting together is one for the open house, because the open house isn't just for the general plan update. It's also the historic preservation master plan is also being updated at this time. And they have to do, as part of their grant requirements, they have to do public outreach and get public comment. So we're going to combine this because we're planning the future and preserving the past, hence our slogan. So it's going to be the general plan and historic preservation master plan updates, open house. So we're going to print these out for you guys to hand out or place around. The QR code that we are using now takes you to the website and not the survey. So that way, any surveys that we update or put on the website, they can go straight to that using those QR codes. And we also have cards being made for this. It's not just talking about the master plan update, it's for the Plan Prescott website, because we do plan on using this, continuing on for implementation of the general plan. So.
And I would like to ask you all, every member, to find organizations that you're associated with, Kiwanis, Rotary, CWAG, Over the Hill Gang, just like I do when I go to all these meetings. And I'm here for double duty, and the first duty is the general plan, and I hand out surveys. So I'm going to ask Tammy to go out to you and ask for at least 2 organizations that you're a member of, so we can get this spread out a lot better than we are today.
And we'll email it in a PDF form, so you can email it out to your any distribution list you belong to, or we can put it, and then we'll print them out too.
Tammy, our open house is on a weekday during work hours. Now, majority people in Prescott are probably retired, but you are eliminating those who work. Do we need to have a second one that would be of a time that others could come, like a weekend one? I know it's, for staff, that's above and beyond.
Well, we did have one, the June was going to be on a weekend. What we've seen with other open houses for other processes, that the weekdays has actually been working better. So that's why we have it till 6, so people can stop by on their way home. When they get off work, they can come by. So what we've seen is that there's a lot more participation, people showing up during the weekdays than on a week, because on the weekends you have stuff planned. You want to go out and recreate and go to the lake and go places mostly in August. That this, we've actually seen from others that the weekdays have worked better. And we'll see what happens, and we can always plan another one. I mean,
Tammy, I see on the flyer it says 3 to 6 p.m. I thought it was 2 to 6 p.m.
so we have the room from 2 to 6, so we're going to set up from 2 to 3.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Tammy. First off, Ted, as you know, I've reached out to some really big organizations, and I think I've gotten a lot of response there already, and I'll keep doing that. But your question 3 kind of implies to me that perhaps we have fallen short of a goal. If there is a goal, what is that goal? Is it a percentage of population?
We just want to make sure we're getting the word out so we have a good churn out. We're going to do a PR notice out, and Councilmember Moore, he offered to do a radio, a PR to go over the radios and stuff, so I don't have to do it. And he actually is a representative for the liaison for this group and for the historic preservation group. So that made it.
But in answer to your question, we came up with we came up with the current process, but we're open to input as to what else could we be doing. I mean, we've had a suggestion from planning staff that robots handing out information on Courthouse Plaza is one option. It's actually in the plan that council adopted because they didn't read it. before they adopted. Robots are in that plan. But what else could we do? What could you think of to get information out so that we get more broadly?
Tammy.
Yeah. Skywriting, but we need an FAA
George?
approval.
Getting information out, what about in a billing from the city?
No, what was that? Sorry.
Into the
Put an insert in the
Oh,
building,
water bills.
billing it from the city.
Very good.
We'll reach out to them to see what we can do.
Actually, you stole my thunder. I was just going to say that the utility billing goes out to all the residents in Prescott. I don't know if there's a cross-department thing that
They've
they
done that
wouldn't be
before
interested,
for
but-
other things. So
The other thing, just driving around town, seeing all the campaign yard reader signs. I don't know if that wouldn't be something to do. People could put it in their yards or on the public property, just some kind of reader board with the QR code, or just go to our website. We're looking for your info. Give us your input.
That's a good idea. I'll look into that.
The large banners at all the intersections. Well, we could, if you don't like them, you could do that. Are you going to, this flyer is going to be, you're going to send us one that we can print out?
We will get them printed. We'll get them printed for the next meeting where you can start.
Oh, so you're going to have a stack back there for us to pick up?
We'll have a
Okay.
stack for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, Ralph has better look at the code restrictions on where you can put signage.
Yes, I was already thinking that.
Everywhere.
Code enforcement's part of our department, so we know where they can go.
I wanted to get back to Jim Huffman, who was asking, like, what's the target? What do we have, 48,000 people in Prescott? And we've got survey responses from 300.
Let's see, I have that number next. Okay. So survey responses to date, we've gotten 284 participants just for the survey. And the general input questions that we never advertised, so just on there, we've had 74.
So that's a pretty small percentage.
But according to the person who worked on the last two general plans, I think the combination of this is more than they got from those two general plans previously. So we're doing okay. We like to do better. So
Yeah, we're doing better than we've done before, but we still could do a lot better.
and if you go back and you watch, what or you can actually go to the City of Prescott website, and on the bottom there's a square for they're doing a virtual open house, is what they're doing for the 89 widening through the Dells. It was really cool. So we're contacting that PR firm definitely, because we would really like to do that, mostly for the 60-day comment period, to have the virtual and a couple open houses for the public. But we can also maybe do something sooner too. So as we're writing this, so we're already looking at different ways to get other use the virtual ways of doing the meeting rooms and stuff to get input, other ways rather than the survey.
One quick suggestion is perhaps the Courier.
Yeah. I've been reaching out to Cindy Barks. Yes. Definitely. Okay. So the other okay. Another thing that has come up, that has been brought up, is the citizen participation plan. When we submitted that to City Council, when they were forming this committee, we kind of scrambled to put something together. We used the last one. So we're going to reach out to the City Council and propose an update to the citizen participation process. This is what's on our website, and this kind of spells out the process. So 2022, we got organized, we did all this stuff, done. 23, launched the website, we're getting the public input, open houses and such. We're going to start reviewing existing elements and update as we go. 2024, finish the plan, do our public meetings and everything we need to do. Then 25 is the ballot. So we're going to use this to update state statutes. Does it say how you have to have the format for your citizen participation plan? So we're going to use something similar to this to make it easier to read and understand. So I just want to throw that out there. Gosh, I keep hitting the wrong one. Got that. Okay, next was the elements. but we wanted to discuss the elements. So we're at 5 o'clock now. So we'll try to make this kind of quick. So, and we've kind of discussed this before. So we, on the left, we have the required elements that we're required to have now. Then in the upper corner, we have the elements once we hit 50,000. Conservation, we are looking at what it's going to include. Recreation, we're breaking out from open space. We already have that. Housing, we're working on. And then energy, we're looking at what to add for that and what's required per state law. So we're looking at conservation and energy. We're looking at, but housing, there is already a lot of information in the existing general plan. We're breaking out for the housing element, and then the Workforce Housing Committee will help finalize that. And the recreation, we're breaking out from open space. And then we have the voluntary elements. We have economic development that's in there, community quality, which includes public buildings, which is part of the 50,000, which includes police, fire, library, and any other public buildings. And we're also adding the implementation section. So, and that's something we're going to do. That's been our goal all along, to have the implementation section in there, which is voluntary and not required by state law. So is there anything else that we should be looking at? And we can, as we start reviewing the elements, which you're going to start doing in September, we're going to start throwing the elements in September to start reviewing and giving comments on. So be ready. But this is kind of what we have spelled out here, and we are looking at all these because we know we're going to hit 50,000 within the next 10 years. So we're just going to already look at it and see what it entails and what we can put together for those. Is there any other discussion?
So are you saying that because we're going to hit that, we need to have these additional elements?
We aren't required, because right now we're not at 50,000. But we know we're going to hit the 50,000 mark. So we've already been looking at it. And like I said, the recreation we already had. Housing was already kind of in there, but we're going to break out as its own element. And then another one was public buildings, which we have in community quality. So a lot of these, for the 50,000, we already had. The only thing we really don't have is the energy and conservation. I know the Klimas group has been pushing the energy. The county had to put it in their 2012 general plan because they hit the population threshold that have to have that element entered into it. So we can look at what, I kind of remember the energy element from that, but we can look at what they have and what others have put in, if they have. So is there any discussion on this while we still have all of you, or most of you? Yeah.
Yeah, Ralph Hess, I'd say we include all of them,
Okay.
including the voluntary elements, because I think that's of interest to the public.
And those are already in the plan, so we're going to just keep those in there. Except the implementation, we're going to add. Okay. Everyone agree with that?
Quick one.
Here.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Once again, a word of caution that last plan, 2015, was 140 some pages. No, it wasn't. It was 130 or something. You want to keep it as short and to the point as possible. This is really, really important. Not eliminating anything, but being very cautious about not repeating things, about being very concise, and finally having a very limited set, hopefully, of really high priority items that it will hopefully address some of the issues with teeth.
And that's what the implementation hopefully will have, consolidate all those goals and everything to put that in the implementation section to have that as the teeth. Okay. I think we got that one. Staff updates, kind of went through that. I was asked to bring updates for the work group. So the staff work group for this is with representation from the different departments of the city, and what we've been talking to them about is doing the presentations. So that's how we're getting the staff here. And also I've been sending them the existing elements to update the information in. So that's what's going on in the background, that we have the different departments. Fire, that one's going to be a lot longer because right now fire's like half a page. It's going to be a couple of pages once maybe 3 once he's done with it. But there's a lot going on with the fire department and things like that we are adding to. So right now in the background, water, green infrastructure, all that's being reviewed by the city staff. They're updating the information, the data, the stats and everything. And then that's the information we're going to be bringing back to you to review and update starting in September. And that's really all for the work group. And then, so our next meeting, July 26th, we have a presentation by water, just one presentation, but it's going to be a deep fluid subject. So it always is. We're going to be finalizing the materials for the open house. So things we want you to think about. How will you be involved? Do you want to be on the check-in table? What areas or boards or that you want to be at to help? And you can rotate around the boards too. We can either
Bartend.
You'll bartend.
Are you bringing send me an email.
And then any other ideas that you have for that, for the open house. So
I like Andre's idea of having some, not a bar, but.
Well, the last meeting was going to be when they had the Brew Fest, and actually Economic Development was going to try to get tickets to auction off for that. So, but also Economic Development, great asset, and they're reaching out to areas that we could have a raffle to try to get people to come. We're raffle off different things, park passes. Joe mentioned a park pass for the parks and things like that. So we're already looking into things to get people that we can advertise.
The takeaway from this year's Earth Day is we didn't have bags for people to put things in. So I don't know how much handouts to have, but at least have the bags. And I like the idea of having some refreshment.
Okay.
I really think that's a good idea, and I vote for Andre to be the bartender.
Cookie man.
Yeah.
Last thing, any other items we wanted to see on the next agenda? I think we were going to.
You said the next meeting, we're going to do water, right?
Water's presenting.
And who's it? Okay.
Probably
The department.
the
Do we
water
want to have a
resources.
guest person speak at all? Gary, you were saying?
No, it's
you
the
had some-
department that's going to come in.
Oh, okay, it's just the department.
Tell us who's coming from the department.
I believe it's Leslie and Brian.
Leslie.
Matt's going to be later for green infrastructure. Like he did with Clemus. Yeah, so that's going to be a separate discussion.
So again, Leslie and?
Brian?
Perfect. Oh, I meet with Brian tomorrow.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Ralph, yes. On a couple of our agendas, we were going to be discussing what the committee felt should be the definition of a major amendment to the plan. And we haven't gotten to that, so I'd like to have that on the next agenda.
That's a section, that's an element, that's a section of the code we'll bring forward at a time to review, as reviewing an element of the plan, because that is an element.
Well, I don't know if it's officially an element,
Yeah,
but
it's a section in the
Well, it's
plan.
a section in the plan.
And that's required per state statutes to have
Right.
what triggers a major plan amendment.
Right, but I'd like to maybe move it up on the agenda schedule, because if the city charter review group is going to be looking at a charter amendment regarding what a major amendment is, I think it would be helpful to know what the general plan committee is saying is going to be a major amendment.
Okay, we could do that.
I agree.
Anything else for the good? Nope.
Meeting adjourned.